recognition of guests, the Honourable Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to welcome all of my colleagues back to another day of debate, another week of debate here in the legislature. This being the 1st of December, of course, is evident with all of our members here. We're wearing a ribbon for World AIDS Day, Mr. Speaker, and I just think it's really, really important to always remember and to never forget that even in the midst of a worldwide health pandemic, that there remain many global challenges that require global solidarity, Mr. Speaker, in leadership and the continued provision of health services and educational activism, Mr. Speaker. So I'm glad to see members recognizing this very important day. I was also happy to read, Mr. Speaker, that the Le Festival de Fête is to take place in Abram Village beginning early December, and will continue on with events throughout the month of December leading up to the Christmas season, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad to see that COVID, while it has changed a lot of things, it hasn't dampened the spirit, the love of music, family, and community on display every day in our Acadian and Francophone communities, and I just would encourage everyone to get out and support that. COVID will change a little bit about the delivery of these events, but I can speak from experience to say it will certainly be a time in the Evangeline region. So. Also wanted to offer my congratulations, Mr. Speaker, to the 4 inductees announced to the PEI Sports Hall of Fame: Peter Gallant in the sport of curling, Harry Polton in harness racing, my good friend Alan Andrews for hockey, and I would have to say youth leadership, Mr. Speaker, in this province, and also a very near and dear friend of mine, Mr. Louis Murphy, for baseball, Mr. Speaker. I would just congratulate all of these individuals, and when I think of Louis Murphy, Mr. Speaker, my heroes as a kid watching ball were Billy Connolly, Joe Hughes, Boone Larkin, Marty Keown, and all of these local individuals. And this little 5'5" pitcher with big glasses with a mustache and big sideburns, Mr. Speaker, who I would have swore that the Lord himself came down and touched him on the arm because he threw lightning out of that arm, Mr. Speaker, and pitched right up until he was 70 in old-timers ball. I was at an old-timers tournament with him in Yarmouth, and he pitched 2 games. He touched 2 no-hitters, Mr. Speaker. He threw 3 innings for each one at 70 years old. So that's how good Louis Murphy is. So I'm glad that all of these individuals have taken a spot in the PEI Sports Hall of Fame. Very, very deserving. And finally, Mr. Speaker, my appreciation and thanks to Dave Stewart and Laura Chapin for developing the web series looking at the history of gay and lesbian Prince Edward Island, called Before Grindr, The Secret Social History of Gay and Lesbian PEI, Mr. Speaker. It's a 6-part web series that I encourage all islanders to watch. This is an important part of our history and identity, Mr. Speaker, that has been ignored, hidden, and not talked about for far too long. And I just praise Dave and Laura and all of those who contributed to the program, Mr. Speaker. And I would encourage all members of this legislature and all islanders to check it out at rainbowhub.ca. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I wish you a good day.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe I will, again, as I often do, pick up on the Premier's closing remarks there about the work that Dave Stewart and Laura Chapin have done on the history of the gay community here on Prince Edward Island. And it was a beautiful article that was done. And really, it's important, particularly on World AIDS Day, which is one of the other things the Premier talked about, that this marginalised community is drawn out of that place of stigma which it spent for so long. So I appreciate the work that Dave and Laura are doing on that, and I think it's a really important contribution to the history of this island. And here on World AIDS Day, a story of a devastating virus that ravaged a community. Sounds all very familiar, although of course AIDS was very much a virus of a particular community. A couple of actually particular and vulnerable communities, and we've come a long way since AIDS was the devastating disease it once was back in the 1980s. It's no longer a death sentence. People live full and happy lives infected with the AIDS virus now with the help of medication. So we have come a long way, but we have a long way to go in terms of prevention of the disease, and I want to particularly give a shout out to what used to be AIDS PEI, now Peers Alliance, a group that provides sexual health, well-being, and drug use harm reduction for all islanders. And they do tremendous work through advocacy And we have a pretty active harm reduction program here on Prince Edward Island, but again, it could be better. We have a number of needle exchange sites, for example, I think 7 across the island, where various harm reduction opportunities exist, but only a couple of them are used to any degree, and that's the one in Charlottetown here and in Summerside. And we really need to reach out into the rural communities. And in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, they have accessible sites there, mobile outreach units which go into the rural communities, and I think that's something that we should look at here. But more importantly, thank you to Peers Alliance for the work that they do to support that community here on Prince Edward Island. I want to also make mention of Jenny Thompson and her mom, Elaine, who are behind an art exhibit at the Guild, which explores the grief around pregnancy loss and infertility. It was a beautiful interview this morning on CBC Radio, and it takes a lot of courage to come forward and talk about these issues, another stigmatized part of society. And so I really want to make note of Jenny's courage to come forward and do this, and also of the beautiful artwork that she has produced. The exhibition goes till December the 5th at the Guild, and I would encourage all Islanders to go out and have a look at Jenny's beautiful work and to be stimulated to think a little bit more about this difficult topic. And finally, congratulations to Gary Schneider, who just won a national award, a Nature Inspiration Award. He's a winner in 2020. And Gary, of course, is a legendary environmentalist and community activist here on Prince Edward Island. He's been described as PEI's equivalent of Smokey the Bear, and he does fantastic work at the McPhail Forest, of course, and does a number of courses there. He's been passionate for decades on environmentalism, on watersheds, on forest health, on habitat, on owls. Any of you have done an owl prowl with Gary at the McPhail Forest is an unforgettable experience. So congratulations to Gary for this very well-deserved award. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's great to rise again today in House. I too would like to make mention to World AIDS Day, and to congratulate and thank everyone for wearing their ribbons here today. Also, I'd like to congratulate the 4 inductees into the Sports Hall of Fame, 4 very deserving individuals. And Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to make mention the rural municipality of Musqueam is holding a Decorate Your House contest this Christmas season, and it's so nice to see everybody out in their yards and putting up all these lights, and I wish everybody the best of luck in winning some prizes, but it's great for community spirit. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so very happy to hear the previous speakers ahead of me mention World AIDS Day, and it is a very significant day that we need to recognize and acknowledge. Mr. Speaker, I'm very much looking forward to participating in a Zoom event this evening at 6 p.m. It was originally planned, organized through Peers Alliance to take place at Bar 1911, but due to COVID-19, they've had to shift, and so it's a virtual event now. But I very much look forward to participating in that event. Mr. Speaker, this past Saturday, November the 28th, the COVID-19 testing site on Park Street experienced a surge in individuals looking to be tested. The situation was closely monitored, and by mid-afternoon it was decided to set up a temporary testing site in Stratford. What I saw unfold over an hour and a half was nothing more than amazing. From the time that I was asked to make an initial call to Mayor Steve Ogden at 3:40 p.m. requesting the use of the town centre, many entities stepped up and made the temporary testing site possible. The first individual came through the doors and was tested at 5:01 p.m. So that's less than an hour and a half to get that site up and running. The professional, efficient manner in which staff from Health PEI, Island EMS, TIE, ITSS, and Health and Wellness worked together on this site to get it up and running, and it was truly amazing to witness. On top of this, the lab staff worked hard to get the testing process completed for well over 1,000 specimens in an unprecedented amount of time. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to single out 2 individuals that work for the town of Stratford. They were on site, and every request, however large or small, was catered to in a very timely fashion. Those 2 individuals would be Jeremy Pierce and Madison Snell. So again, thank you for everybody that came together to make that happen in such an incredible short period of time. As Health Minister, it certainly made me very proud. Thank you.
The honourable member from Charlottetown West Royalty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want to say hello to everybody in District 14 and hope they're having a great day today. I was out looking at all the lights last night in the area and just unbelievable spirit. And today, Mr. Speaker, is Giving Tuesday. So we have to remember what that means and the real essence of Giving Tuesday, and it's time to dig into your wallets and support the local charities which need our help, whether it's Blooming House, Stars for Life, and just make sure that that's a priority today as they're well in need. And special shout out to the United Way. Mr. Speaker, I just want to say congratulations to playwright Tara Began, who recently won the 2020 Siminovich Prize for Innovation in Theatre, awarded recently on November 26th. This was a $100,000 annual prize, the most prestigious in Canada. And her father, as she said in her acceptance speech, was the late, great Lou Began, raised on the soils of Epiquet. Her work frequently addressed the social and political negligence that permits and perpetuates violence against Indigenous women. This is a major award and strong island roots, and I want to say congratulations to Tara and her family, the Began family of Prince Edward Island. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course, I want to welcome my colleagues back to the House and all those watching from District 18, Rustico Emerald. And Mr. Speaker, I wanted to recognize really the staff, the administration, the parents, the students, the unions and the community as a whole for their professionalism, cooperation and courage as we dealt with the first real case of COVID in our public school system. And Mr. Speaker, that was at Charlottetown Rural, and they just did a fantastic job. I mean, of course, Dr. Morrison and her staff at the CPHO responded, and everyone followed the operational plans that we've been working on since the spring are in place, and we're able to get the contact tracing done, get the cleaning of the schools done, and get the communications out. And Mr. Speaker, I wanted to give a shout out as well to the Department of Health and the Department of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy for the work they did with the testing clinic that the Minister just talked about. It really was it showed what good planning can do. And Mr. Speaker, some people say that we were having some good luck in this case, but I just wanted to say, you know, they say that good luck is the result of good planning well executed, Mr. Speaker, and I think that really is the case here, Mr. Speaker. I also wanted to recognize Giving Tuesday, as the member from West Royalty said, and I wanted to give some suggestions of where you might be able to give. Our Healthy School Food Program, Mr. Speaker. Now you can, when you're ordering online for your student, you can choose to top that up and contribute toward another student's lunch, Mr. Speaker, and do donations in general on the website. And Mr. Speaker, you might want to contribute to the Inspire a Love of Reading by the fundraising campaign from the PEI Literacy Alliance, as they work towards signing up 4,000 students for the Imagination Library program. And Mr. Speaker, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Fill the Jar fundraiser for the North Rustico Wellness Centre and Arena. And if you go to fillthejar.ca, there's a number of options where you can donate or sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Tyne Valley, Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's a pleasure to rise today to let everyone know about a fantastic online fundraiser that's happening right now, an auction for the Lot 16 Hall. I'm a little hesitant, though, to bring this forward today, Mr. Speaker, because I'm quite concerned about the amount I'm going to need to pay to win my bid on the plate of brownies that I've been trying to get. But that aside, I encourage everyone to check it out and support this wonderful online fundraiser happening right now through Sunday, December 6th at 6 p.m. Check it out at the Lot 16 Hall Facebook page. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it is a pleasure to rise in this legislature today to say hi to everybody in Mermaid Stratford. I would also like to recognize that it is World AIDS Day, and I'd just like to add on to what the Minister of Health and Wellness brought up earlier. really, when you see that many organizations work together to spin up a testing facility like they did in Stratford on Saturday and Sunday, we had so many people in our district that were impacted by that. And I received numerous calls of gratitude that a second testing site, once it was recognized that the wait time to get to the Park Avenue site was so long. I just wanted to recognize that and acknowledge the minister's call to the town of Stratford, Mayor Ogden, the councillors, EMS, all the organizations and departments that came together to make that happen. So really beneficial to the community. I too would like to recognize Gary Schneider. He is a constituent of mine. He is such a powerhouse when it comes to environment here in PEI, and just to sit and chat with Gary for a few minutes, you come away knowing so much more and just happier in general, because he's just such a great man that gives to the province in so many ways. And then I'd also like to recognize a business in my district, the Wood Group of Companies, Donna and Della Wood. Donna and Della, when they heard that there was a shortage of trees for the Summerside Y Service Club and Summerside Lions Club, came together and offered 80 trees out of their woodlot in Stratford in T Hill. And I would just like to point out that they are a U-Serve Christmas tree lot that you can get your Christmas trees from. They're nice and close to Charlottetown. And I would highly recommend, if you're looking to get out into and look for some Christmas trees, to go out and see Donna and Dell. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Communities.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't think the honourable member should have mentioned anything about brownies, because I do like brownies with ADL cheese and milk, so I'm going to have to check that out. So the competition might be on there. I want to give a shout out to a promotion we've launched, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the department with industry, and it's the Holiday Catch. And it allows people to go online to our Prince Edward Island Seafood page, and you can toggle through that and win new lobster, mussels, oysters, and gift packs. And we're going to directly set you up with companies across the island that are selling their goods and their seafood products to the world. So you can really go on. I'll use an example of Cascon-Peck oysters. You can click on Cascon-Peck oysters, and you'll be able to directly go to their page where you can buy their products, or Raspberry Point, or various other ones. And I also want to give a shout out to Megan yesterday. The Honourable Minister of Finance and I stopped by the Cape Reef Seafood and Smokehouse down in Murray Harbour, and it was good to see how this young couple have developed a business around smoked meat or smoked seafood, and see how they brought it a long way. So we're going to work with them to see if we make sure we get their product out to the marketplace and online sales. So a shout out to them also. And I think it just goes to show the creativity of our small businesses to promote themselves and support buy local. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister of Environment, Water and Climate Change, Minister responsible for the status of women.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's certainly a pleasure to rise today. It's each time I do rise in here and I look around, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to work with these colleagues in here who are working so tremendously hard for Islanders. Certainly, I'd like to acknowledge and recognize today that it is World AIDS Day. Also, I just want to give a big shout out to all the folks that were so quick to set up shop in Stratford. I couldn't believe it when we, as my colleagues, we received a text from Minister Aylward at 5:08 on Saturday and said they're up and running, and really my jaw absolutely dropped. It was tremendously quick, and I had heard from some constituents in District 9 that they were just so pleased and in awe at how well they were treated and how empathetic and compassionate the staff were. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to all the staff who were there to help support those that were definitely in uncertain times there on Saturday. Finally, I'd like to congratulate Gary Schneider for winning the prestigious Nature Inspiration Award by the Canadian Museum of Nature for the McPhail Woods Ecological Forestry Project. This summer I had the opportunity to visit Gary, and I really was blown away by what he's done and certainly what he brings to the environment here in Prince Edward Island. In fact, I went home that day and I couldn't say enough about the work and just my meeting with him. And the next day, I took my family out there to see it firsthand. And my boys, for the first time, we discovered an American toad along the stream. So that was pretty neat. I took a video and sent it to the Director of Forest, Fish and Wildlife, and she suggested that's very rare on Prince Edward Island. She hasn't seen a lot of those, and anyway, I hope the toad had self-isolated as well when he got here. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to rise today, and a big hello to the folks in District 9. I wish us all a very productive week ahead. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to be here again today in the House, and hello to all my colleagues. I'd like to thank the Minister of Health for his quick work, for all his staff and all the departments that reached out. And I'd also like to thank ITSS, who were also involved in making sure that we got that clinic open in Stratford, and thank them for the work that they've done. And as Minister of Fisheries mentioned, we were out in District 4 yesterday and got to go down and visit with Megan McLeod and her husband Murray have the new Cape Reef smokehouse, and got to sample some lovely smoked mackerel and salmon. And I really encourage everyone to go online. I'm working with the minister to ensure that they get their license for sale here pretty soon, and hopefully we can send those out as gifts this Christmas. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Didn't miss anyone, did I? The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, Belvedere, and the Opposition House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the early 1980s, 40 years ago, there was no such thing in PEI as a shelter for women. In fact, there was no such thing as family violence prevention services. Domestic violence was not something discussed in public. It lived behind closed doors, and there was denial that there such a thing existed. A powerful group of ordinary island women, including survivors, met in common interest at the Voluntary Resource Centre. They knew that island women had nowhere to go for help or safety, because that was their own story, Mr. Speaker. They founded the Transition House Association and began to gather information and stories they needed to convince the general public that this was real and get the conversation into a public space despite the huge barriers and stigma. Without public acknowledgement and the data to back up the findings, they knew they would never be able to raise the funds to buy a house and make a shelter for women and children fleeing violence a reality. So these ordinary women acted. In particular, Joanne Ings, Julie Devon Dodd, and Judith Whitaker, it's my mom, had over 200 public addresses, meetings, and presentations across the province over the course of a long winter. They were often greeted by shocked silence, anger, denial, and even threats, but also with secret despair and cries for help after the presentations were done. Over and over, they would hear, "I thought I was the only one." The turning point in this marathon was when the Women's Institute endorsed the work of this group, and that validation from such a respected community group changed the story for women in PEI. I remember I was 10 when my mum was doing this. She would be gone 4 or 5 nights a week, every night, for over a year, and she would come back and she would cry almost every night. And I would stay up and wait for her so that she would have someone to talk to, because we were the only ones that we knew that knew what this felt like. This work was so important, Mr. Speaker, that the research report of this groundbreaking grassroots advocacy was called The Unspoken Crime. My mum was the author. And from that work, PEI not only planted the roots of what is now Family Violence Prevention Services, which is available across the entire province, and Transition House, now called Anderson House, but it also became the foundation of the PEI Women's Network. Those same women and some others founded that incredible organization 35 years ago. These essential organizations have empowered, supported, and educated island women for 4 decades and have saved more lives of women and children in PEI than we will ever know. For decades, we have also gathered together as a community on December 6th to honour the lives of women lost to violence. This year, we cannot be together physically at Memorial Hall, but we can join with others for an online video presentation. We will remember the 14 women murdered in Montreal at École Polytechnique in 1989 because they were women, daring to study engineering. We will remember the thousands of Indigenous women and girls who have been murdered or are missing across Canada. We will remember the 10 women in PEI since 1989 who have been murdered by men who knew them. We mourn for everyone who is a survivor and for all those whose lives are harmed by violence. We remember, we mourn, but we commit to act, Mr. Speaker, so that gender-based violence ends, because that's what women leaders did here in PEI 40 years ago. And I am thankful to them for showing us how to lead and why it matters. And Mr. Speaker, I am thankful to my mother for showing me when I was 10 that being a survivor did not mean being a victim. It meant being brave and having the courage and the power to act, and that you can act and you can make a difference, and we can feel that difference 40 years later. She is my hero, and I'd like to thank her.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, Victoria Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's a tough act to follow. Whew. It seems to be the theme of 2020 that we do things differently. We have all proven to be flexible, adaptable, and that we certainly grow innovation out of crisis and necessity. This year's Charlottetown Christmas Parade is no exception. This year, Discover Charlottetown presents Santa Claus Comes to Town, and it will look a little different than previous years. Rather than going to the parade will come to you at your house, or at the very least, it will be very close. This event will last for 4 days. The first leg of the parade started yesterday evening, and it will run until this Saturday, December 5th, as the parade this evening has been postponed until Saturday due to the weather forecast. And as I left the legislature quite later than usual last night, I thought I was going crazy. It wasn't quite even Christmas Eve, and I could hear Santa Claus ringing through, and then it dawned on me when I got home what it was. Holiday cheer will be spread through all 7 Charlottetown neighborhoods by Santa Claus himself. Detailed route maps are available on the City of Charlottetown website. The parade being postponed this evening until Saturday means I will be able to join my family on Waltham Drive on Saturday evening. This year, they will not be accepting letters to Santa. Instead, organizers are encouraging everyone to visit the North Pole Post Office in the Confederation Court Mall until December 6th during mall hours in order to drop off your letters to the North Pole. Non-perishable food donations in support of the Upper Room Hospitality Ministry Food Bank will also be collected at the Confederation Court Mall until December 13th. Collection bins are located at the main level across from Grand Senses Spa. I hope that everyone gets out to enjoy this wonderful parade. We are so fortunate to be able to attend, to be able to welcome the holiday season with a safe and fun visit from Santa. And I want to thank all those involved for making this happen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, Winslow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently, I had the chance to visit the Reach Foundation in Stratford and learn more about the supports they provide to Islanders in recovery. No doubt most of my honourable colleagues have also toured the Reach Foundation previously, but this was my first time. When a constituent reached out with an invitation, I was delighted to say yes. Reach Foundation was established in 2013 by community volunteers from the business, mental health and addiction sectors to support island youth in their recovery from addictions and mental health challenges. REACH stands for Recovery, Employment, Assistance, Courage, and Hope. They offer employment and programming to support clients, helping them build up their skills in literacy, numeracy, computers, problem solving, and communication. The Expanding Your Reach program has been very successful, with its most recent intake of clients achieving a 95% success rate and finding full-time employment. Over 200 Islanders have been supported by the Reach Foundation over the last 7 years, and I applaud and admire each and every one of them for their courage and their determination that they show every day. Groups like the Reach Foundation play an important part in helping meet the needs of Islanders dealing with addictions and mental health challenges. As we shift our approach to mental health and addictions treatment in this province, it is clear that better alignment of inpatient care and community supports will make a difference in the lives of Islanders. I'm grateful that we have community groups like the Reach Foundation helping to reduce the stigma around mental health and addictions and helping to create that better alignment of support. If you do know someone who may be struggling with mental health addictions, show them that there is some kindness and let them know that help and support is out there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions by members, starting with response to questions taken as notice. The Honourable Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On November 26th, the Leader of the Opposition asked me how many foster homes are on Prince Edward Island and what my department is doing to increase the number. I'd like to call to attention the Leader of the Opposition's inaccurate figure of 32 foster families across Prince Edward Island. Mr. Speaker, there are 52 foster families servicing, on average, between 70 to 75 children and youth daily. There are an additional 21 respite homes, which also provide emergency placement for children and youth coming into child protection services. On average, about 200 children and youth are provided care through foster island homes. Concerning increasing the number of foster families, the Division of Child and Family, through Children's Services, supports and assesses foster parents and those wanting to be foster parents. The division has been working on updating the Hope is Where the Heart Is campaign to conduct a focused recruitment engagement starting in 2021, Mr. Speaker. Staff have continued to provide in-person and virtual information sessions on becoming a foster parent. The government website has been updated, and there have been social media posts to encourage Islanders interested in fostering. There is a foster care recruitment committee composed of foster parents, staff from Child and Family Services that meet on a regular basis. All foster homes provide service to children and/or youth with complex care issues such as abuse and neglect. Mr. Speaker, I also committed to bringing back information pertaining to grandparents and/or great-grandparents in PEI that have children in their care. Firstly, it should be noted that we only track numbers of grandparents and great-grandparents of children who have an active child protection file and who are under the care of an alternative care provider. In the Alternative Care Provider Program, there are 180 providers supporting 230 children. Of these providers, there are 64 providers classed as grandparents, with 2 of these providers listed as great-grandparents. As I mentioned on Thursday, November 26th, 36% of all alternative care providers are grandparents, inclusive of the 2 great-grandparents. Additionally, I would like to inform the House that a program review of the Alternative Care Provider Program will be completed in the coming months. This program review includes policy and program services, along with jurisdictional scans of similar programs underway. My department is ensuring the program meets the goals set out by the original pilot while focusing on the needs of children under a child protection lens. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I want to take a brief moment to recognize the tremendous efforts of staff in Child and Family Services for the important work they have continued to do as frontline workers during the pandemic. Thank you for all that you do, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And for our first question, I'll call upon the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Last week during debate on the capital budget, we fairly quickly went by the section related to the Department of Agriculture and Land. Now, part of the reason for the passing of this section so quickly was that compared to many other departments where we see tens of millions of dollars of annual spending, in agriculture and land, the forecast for capital spending in 2021 was a mere $50,000. This is not, of course, the operating budget where very little changes from year to year. This is spending and capital budgets, which in many ways gives a much clearer indication of where government's priorities lie. To the Minister of Agriculture and Land, when I asked questions during the budget debate on whether the department had come forward with a larger budget ask, I was told that no, they hadn't, and that surprised me. It seems to me that there are many opportunities for government to partner with island farmers to provide services that would reduce their operating costs. Minister, Why was your department's request so low?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and that's a great question, and it's a question that we take quite seriously in the Department of Agriculture. Department of Agriculture is based a lot on policy, Mr. Speaker. We build the policy and for the farmers that they can adapt some of the changes to the environment now, Mr. Speaker. As far as capital, Mr. Speaker, we support industry. We support industry that are the experts in that, Mr. Speaker, and we support the farmers that want to, of course, we can't be the experts in everything, Mr. Speaker, so we have to work with industry to make sure they have all the needs that they require. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. In my many discussions with island farmers over the last few months, it's clear that they are, as many other people, facing unprecedented pressures right now. While the provincial government can't control many of the stressors that are placed on island farmers, there are areas where I believe government could step up and be a more active partner, not necessarily be the expert, but to provide useful information to farmers. To the same minister, what is your vision and strategic plan for the department so government can be a truly active partner with island farmers?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Mr. Speaker, provincial government, the Department of Agriculture and Land, Mr. Speaker, work with the federal government, Mr. Speaker. We have a 5-year agreement with the federal government on the CAP program, Mr. Speaker, the Canadian Agriculture Partnership. Mr. Speaker, it's $60-40 that we give to industry. We support industry for everything from stewardship to technology, Mr. Speaker. This is the way that government supports agriculture through these programs. We work with the federal government, $60-40, Mr. Speaker, and it works really well. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Technology has aided farmers in being much better able to monitor the need for inputs such as pesticides and fertilizers and water. Soil sampling, air monitoring, and aerial surveillance, all of these things provide critical information that can aid farmers in reducing their applications of all of these costly and potentially damaging inputs if they are put on at the wrong time in the wrong amount. To the same minister, why did we not see in the capital budget funds, for example, for blight spore monitoring equipment all across this province so that farmers don't have to spray needlessly?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, $37 million gets spent in the 5-year agreement, Mr. Speaker, with the CAP program, Mr. Speaker. It's for technologies like the opposition leader speaks of, Mr. Speaker, so that farmers can use this. It's also industry, Mr. Speaker, plays a big role in this, Mr. Speaker. They are the driving force. Government are the supports there for them. $37 million, Mr. Speaker, that's what we support. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. And if we have $60-40, I don't understand why we're only seeing $50,000 in our capital budget here on Prince Edward Island. It seems like there's a tremendous opportunity for government to support farmers far more than they currently do. Another simple service that could be provided by government at relatively low cost is aerial surveillance of crops to determine the early presence of disease, of drought stress, or lack of nutrients. Drones fitted with multispectral analysis cameras can effectively and efficiently provide information to farmers that could save literally millions of dollars and prevent unnecessary applications of fertilizers and pesticides. To the same minister, why did we not see and ask for a small fleet of such drones so that government could partner with farmers to reduce their costs, potential exposures to rural islanders, and improve soil and water health?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Mr. Speaker, this Department of Agriculture realizes the spin-offs of agriculture, Mr. Speaker. This is the #1 industry in our province, Mr. Speaker. Over $1.5 billion is the spin-offs from agriculture on this little island, Mr. Speaker. We have a small fleet, Mr. Speaker. We have a small fleet of drones that are doing the work that the Leader of the Opposition is asking us to do, Mr. Speaker. We have the drones. We work with the Climate Change Lab, Mr. Speaker, at UPI, who has a
a huge fleet, Mr. Speaker, of drones. We work with them, we collaborate, we're not wasting money here. We're talking about capital budget and operating budgets, Mr. Speaker, they're two different things. We are here to support the farmers, and we support them, Mr. Speaker, with millions of dollars. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thanks again, Mr. Speaker. Climate change is one of the biggest challenges, of course, that we face today. And here on Prince Edward Island, agriculture is the second largest contributor to our greenhouse gas emissions. But we have an opportunity to look to farmers instead as a powerful part of the solution to reducing our carbon emissions. Farmers could be supported to incorporate carbon sequestration into their practices if government was to come forward with a program to recognize the great work that this sector could do to reduce GHGs. Not only would we be improving soil health and water retention, but with an initiative like California's Healthy Soil Program, farmers could receive an additional income stream by following good practices. To the same minister, what plans does your government have to introduce an equivalent program here on Prince Edward Island?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm glad the honourable member brought this up, Mr. Speaker. Right now, as I'm in this legislature, Mr. Speaker, the department is meeting with a team to put together all the programs we are doing already. We listened to the presenters from California in the standing committee, Mr. Speaker, and we realized that we are far ahead than we thought we were. We're not much further behind than where the California group were, Mr. Speaker, and we want to be the next leaders, Mr. Speaker. Agriculture needs to be the solution, Mr. Speaker, not the problem, and I support agriculture on this island. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, Belvedere.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This weekend, the public learned through the Guardian front page that what we've been hearing rumours and whispers about for months, that the community outreach and shelter services provided by the Salvation Army for some of our most vulnerable islanders are not acceptable. During a Health and Social Development Committee meeting with the Salvation Army, we raised questions about overcrowding, safety, quality of support, staff skills and training, and to work with vulnerable and at-risk islanders, and the impartial or fair delivery of service. The Salvation Army assured us in the committee that everything was fine. But, Mr. Speaker, we now have clear evidence, thanks to some brave individuals, that things are not fine. A question to the Minister of Social Development and Housing. You can't say that you didn't know about these issues. What service standards, policies and guidelines does your department require to protect vulnerable islanders like those at Bedford McDonald House and the Community Outreach Centre?
The Honourable Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and certainly I did see the article that was in the Guardian this past weekend. When the honourable member says as far as protecting and ensuring that residents are safe and the like, Mr. Speaker, there is for the Outreach Centre, there is a community board that is in place with a number of representatives on it, including CMHA, John Howard Society, Blooming House, Salvation Army, Peers Alliance, Adventure Group, Mi'kmaq Confederacy, Native Council of PEI, PEI Council of Persons with Disabilities, Upper Room Soup Kitchen, and Food Bank. So when we look at the partners that we have involved in the day-to-day operations, and not only the day-to-day operations, but in the governance of the Outreach Centre, Mr. Speaker, I think that we can feel quite confident in the way that the programs that are administered and delivered from the Outreach Centre take place. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, Belvedere.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm thinking that the people that actually use the services aren't feeling incredibly confident. And, you know, while sort of expecting a community board that has a governance role to be sort of the day-to-day management of an organisation delivering services on behalf of government, that's abdication of responsibility, Mr. Speaker. Today, The Guardian reported that the Salvation Army will be promptly investigating the allegations that were made against it. However, the Salvation Army is receiving $3.7 million of public funds to deliver these shelter services on behalf of government. Question to the Minister of Social Development and Housing. As the Salvation Army is a contracted service provider, it is totally inappropriate for them to investigate themselves. Will you commit to an independent third-party investigation to begin immediately?
The Honourable Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'm going to go back, and I'm not going to roll out the honourable member's suggestion. I certainly would not rule that out. But we do have a contract in place with the Salvation Army, Mr. Speaker. I did reference the governance board and the various members that are part and parcel of that board. But again, Mr. Speaker, we do have a contract in place with the Salvation Army to deliver the services, whether it's with regard to Bedford McDonald House, the Outreach Centre, and Smith Lodge. So, Mr. Speaker, we look over the last year and a half, the Salvation Army has and will continue to be a great partner of my department. Again, Mr. Speaker, I will not completely state no to the honourable member's question, suggestion, but I'm not prepared to stand here right at this point in time and say absolutely yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown Belvedere.
Perhaps the minister doesn't understand the depth of the challenge that his department is facing. Section 15 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms makes it clear that every individual in Canada, regardless of race, religion, national or ethnic origin, colour, sex, age, or physical or mental disability, is to be treated with the same respect, dignity and consideration. Mr. Speaker, that is not happening at the Community Outreach Centre right now. This means that government must not discriminate on any of these grounds in its laws or programs. Islanders expect and deserve government programs and services to meet, at minimum, their basic rights. It is their right. And to protect those groups who suffer social, political and legal disadvantage in society. Question for the Minister. The government is ultimately responsible for these programs and services as the primary funder of this contract. It is clear that the services provided are in breach of basic human rights. It's clear that people are receiving different levels of support based on grounds that are protected from discrimination if they're able to receive any support at all. What are you doing right now to address this shocking failure of your government?
Honourable Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I think it would be open to debate whether individuals, whether their basic human rights have been trampled upon or if the Charter has been broken. I would certainly look at it from a different standpoint, Mr. Speaker. We do have a very credible organization in the Salvation Army who is delivering great services. Our government has made tremendous strides, Mr. Speaker, with regard to providing shelter, temporary shelter, whether it's through Blooming House, whether it's through Bedford McDonald House, and with the opening of Smith Lodge. It was our government, Mr. Speaker, that initiated the Outreach Centre at 211 Euston Street and then moved it for a temporary basis to Smith Lodge. With that, it is providing great services to the people of Prince Edward Island and certainly to the people of Charlottetown, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Mermaid Stratford.
Mr. Speaker, we've talked a lot about protecting land and water in this sitting. Most of the attention has been on the Lands Protection Act, but that's only half of the equation. Land use planning can be used as an important tool for keeping agricultural land in production, for maintaining soil quality, protecting our water, or properly planning roads and other infrastructure. Right now, most of rural PEI has little to no planning, which means that this tool is not on the table. Question to the Minister of Agriculture and Land. Do you agree that land use planning is a key piece of how we protect our land and water for future generations?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and absolutely yes, I do, Mr. Speaker. We have to protect, Mr. Speaker, we have to protect our agricultural land, Mr. Speaker, here on this island. It's our number one industry on this island right now, and it survived COVID, Mr. Speaker. It thrived through COVID, Mr. Speaker. So agriculture never more than ever is our most important, Mr. Speaker, and land use is important, and everything from development and to forestry, Mr. Speaker, plays a big role.
The honourable member from Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Another effect of lack of planning in rural parts of the province is that many of our communities are not well laid out. We have subdivisions in the middle of nowhere. We have strip development instead of compact, walkable villages. This pattern of development makes it less efficient and therefore more expensive to deliver services and infrastructure, whether it's roads, power, or rural internet. It also means that our children have longer bus routes to get to school, and our medical services are further away. Question to the Minister. Do you agree that the lack of planning increases the cost of infrastructure and reduces access to services in rural PEI?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, I do, Mr. Speaker. I couldn't agree with the member more, Mr. Speaker. She's talking right from my book, Mr. Speaker, about development, Mr. Speaker. And I have to go to the Lands Matter Committee that is now working, Mr. Speaker. And land use is part of what is being presented to them, Mr. Speaker, because it's not only land protection, it's land use, Mr. Speaker, and land planning, Mr. Speaker. It's those three that have to go together so that this island can be nicely inhabited for the next 100 years, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The honourable member from Mermaid Stratford.
Happy to hear that. A lack of planning also creates conflict between islanders over development. Early this year, we saw an example of a road cut through a sand dune in St. Margaret's Beach. In 2017, the Minister of Transportation's district, there was a proposed development for a waste facility in Baldwin's Road. That was a major concern for local residents who understandably don't want a waste facility next to their houses. These examples are countless. Proper planning could help reduce, if not eliminate, those sorts of conflicts. Question to the Minister of Agriculture and Land. Do you agree that good planning can reduce conflicts over development?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and absolutely yes, Mr. Speaker. And I fully agree, and we have to continue to, and I really want to see what comes out of this Land Matters, Mr. Speaker, when this group of people come, islanders, Mr. Speaker, that come with our report, Mr. Speaker, and recommendations on land use. I am very much looking forward to that because our department spends a lot of time with conflicts, Mr. Speaker, and way too much time. And if we had a document, Mr. Speaker, that this is the way it is, Mr. Speaker, we'd all be much better off in the long run. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The lack of planning is nothing new, though, Mr. Speaker. We've had repeated studies, reports, commissions, public consultations, and task forces over almost 50 years now. The conclusion has always come back to the same thing. We need island-wide land use planning to protect the land and water, to reduce conflicts between islanders, and to help keep services accessible and affordable. The Minister knows full well that his Land Matters project, they're going to tell him the same thing. It's really just a delay tactic to avoid having to make that hard decision. So question to the Minister, will you do what every study has asked for over the last 50 years and bring land use planning for all rural PEI?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I don't think this government is scared of making tough decisions, Mr. Speaker. We've done it. I think our record shows for this ourselves, Mr. Speaker. And I can't speak for why the former government and the government before that didn't take the recommendations from those plans, Mr. Speaker. But this Land Matters group, Mr. Speaker, I have full confidence in what they will present to me, Mr. Speaker, as we can go forward and have strong land use and land planning for the future here and land protection, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The honourable member from Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I am glad to hear this answer, because when it comes to protecting our land and water, it's hard to take government seriously when they won't proclaim legislation that's been passed by this House. We've talked a lot about the Water Act, but between 2016 and 18, this legislature also passed several bills that made changes to the planning profession, including Bill 25, an act to amend the Planning Act in 2016. Bill 21, the Planning Statutes Amendment Act 2017, and Bill 20, the Professional Planners Act in 2018. These bills were all passed, but they haven't been proclaimed by Cabinet. So they have never come into force. So question to the Minister of Agriculture and Land, when do you plan to proclaim these bills so professional planners have the tools needed to do their jobs properly?
Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Land.
Mr. Speaker, we're working on the Planners Act as we speak, Mr. Speaker. It was proclaimed in 2016. This government came into power in 2019. Took us a little while to figure out why it wasn't enacted by the previous government. But Mr. Speaker, we are working on the regs, and it should be to Cabinet very soon, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question today is to the Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to commend the Minister of Transportation on a move that he did a few months back where he gave the used tires to a company where they would reshred them themselves and they wouldn't have to be taken off the island. But my concern is the Minister of Finance, from my understanding, is the one that's responsible for taxes and levies in this province. And are you prepared to take the levy or taxes off of these tires when people go buy new tires, that the levy's still on them to pay for this fee that doesn't exist anymore?
The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Honourable Member, we're looking at this right now to see how the new method or new way of doing this is going to work out. And we'll definitely take that under consideration. But I'd also like to point out to the Honourable Member, we continue to work to ensure that we are going to be net zero, and we want to make sure the environment is well looked after. So if continuing with this is something that we think will add to that, we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my next question is to the same Minister. Minister, if you have a car with 17-inch tires or lower, it's $4 a tire, which is $16 for 4 tires. If they're 17 inches and bigger, it's $11.25. That's quite a difference, which accounts to $45 per tire, or per 4. We are encouraging people to put proper tires on their vehicle, have 4 same tires. Tires are not a cheap commodity. What can I tell Islanders that ask me, why are we still paying this tax?
The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Honourable Member, as you're well aware, the taxes that we charge go back into government programs and services, and we want to ensure that the tires that are on the road are looked after when it's time for them to be put aside. We want to ensure that they're treated in the right way, and we are working right now on a new program for shredding of tires, and we'll definitely take into consideration the tax that's being paid by Islanders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Third Party, your second supplementary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And once again, as I'd indicated, these tax dollars are not going to what they used to go to before. So you indicated you're relying them to general funds. Well, Islanders are paying this, and in these times right now, Islanders don't need to pay more than they have to. So can you tell us when exactly this will happen? Will it happen next week, next month, or in 2 years' time? Thank you, Mr. Minister.
The Honourable Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the Honourable Member giving us the amounts people pay. And if the Honourable Member could just go to the grocery store, he'll see he pays over $1 on a case of pop or a case of any beverage, and over time that adds up to be a lot. It's part of what we do to ensure that the environment is looked after. The money goes back into the province. I already promised the Honourable Member that we would look at the fact that we are charging that tax, and we will make sure that when we see how the new program is going to roll out, we will definitely review that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Aylward-Inverness.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister responsible for infrastructure and energy. Recently, the federal government and the province announced a $44 million wind energy corridor for Western PEI to transmit high-voltage power to the provincial grid. In 2006, the then government announced a power corridor to go into the residential area of Howland Road. In 2009, the previous Liberal government offered to relocate most of the high-voltage power lines from the residential areas. Will the funds announced in the Western Energy Corridor be used to relocate the few power poles that are currently in front of and remaining in residents' homes in Howland Road?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's good to get some questions on such an important topic, that the great work that we're doing to help lower our carbon footprint here on Prince Edward Island. I think we're doing a great job. The corridor that the honourable member is talking about under the previous government, I know that there's some people on the Howland Road that that do want their post moved. At this point, we are only in the early stages of planning for what that transmission line is going to look like. So we don't really know 100% yet where the current one is going to go. As you know, it's a $40 million project, so it's a significant size of a project. We want to make sure that we get it right so that we can access the wind in the Skinner's Pond area. That said, I've asked my staff to go back and look at the Howland Road and see if can this be incorporated as a solution into this current plan. And at this point, I mean, it's on the docket and we're looking at it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from O'Leary-Inverness.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Minister, these residents have been very patient and have received commitments that should a power corridor be required further west, their issue would be reviewed. They have written correspondences to the Premier, the Egmont MP, Bobby Morrissey, Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy, and also to the Minister of Social Development and Housing. Question to the Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy. Will you commit to respond to their letter to schedule a meeting with the residents of Howland Road to work out a solution that will see these high voltage lines rerouted away from their homes?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, yeah, sure, we'll schedule a meeting to go up and speak with the residents. And, we are aware of the concern and we know what the issue is. And like I said, we're in the planning stages of seeing how we can incorporate it into our current $40 million project. I do want to point out that it's very important for us to get the wind energy to our market, which is PEI. So I think there's some confusion that the wind energy that we produce here in Prince Edward Island goes off island. It doesn't. We use it on PEI, and our plan is to continue to grow it until we can get to 100% here in PEI. That said, $40 million doesn't go nearly as far as one would like it to go. I've asked the staff to look at it, but I'd certainly go up and meet with the residents in the area, and maybe we can set it up together, and you can lead the discussion, and I'll take the bullets and try to have some answers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from O'Leary-Inverness, your second supplementary.
That sounds like a wonderful idea, Mr. Minister, having you take some of the bullets for a change in Howland Road. Actually, Mr. Minister, I can even give you some help here in this. Is that there also could be an economic case for rerouting the power lines from their current location. If the lines were to be rerouted, the material from them could be incorporated into the new project. Whether it's the lines themselves, the insulators, or the power poles, all the materials being removed from Howland Road could be repurposed elsewhere, which is really the time to do this, which could also save costs to your wind energy power corridor to the western end of the island. Minister, will you commit today to the residents of Howland Road that the high voltage lines in front of their homes will be rerouted using funds with the $44 million project announced earlier this year, as this will go a long way in garnering the regional support for such a power corridor, which will be essential for future wind farms, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it is a good question, and it's a good question, and the minister or the member makes some good points there that we have to make sure that we have buy-in from people, because this is very important. It is very important that we have the corridor, and it's very important that we have access to the wind, and it's very important that we get the wind to the market, which is the rest of Prince Edward Island. I'm not going to lie to the member. I'm not familiar enough with the geography of the West that I know where the new transmission line is going to go versus where the Howland Road is. But I will commit to having it reviewed, and I'll do you one better. If you want to come in and meet with myself and my deputy in the Energy Corporation and give us our suggestions directly, you're welcome to come in, and we'll hear you out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Cornwall Meadowbanks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is today to the Minister of Education. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to thank the administration and Principal Dale McIsaac at Charlottetown Rural High School and their staff on what a great job they did. But Mr. Speaker, roughly a third of the Charlottetown Rural students population did not attend school as of Monday. This would roughly be about 300 some students, and only 70 have been asked to self-isolate. This leaves over 200 who are staying at home at a precaution. We heard on Compass last evening that those doing so at a precaution will not be provided with remote learning. Can the minister tell this House exactly how many remote learning requests his department has denied so far in the school season?
The Honourable Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too want to commend the staff led by Principal Dale McIsaac at the Charlottetown Rural High School, and really everyone involved, especially the students and the parents. It is really amazing how good planning comes through in the end. And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to good planning, that's exactly what we have when it comes to remote learning. The department has been planning for remote learning since the early stages of the pandemic. And Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that we've asked any students that require remote learning to contact the department. The names of any individual that was impacted is confidential, so they have to contact. And to my knowledge, Mr. Speaker, we haven't denied remote learning for any one of those students impacted at the Charlottetown Rural High School.
The honourable member from Cornwall Meadowbanks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So my next questions will be easily answered as well. Earlier this year, governments across the country released back-to-school plans, most of which contained plans how the transition to remote learning would work. In the plan released by our government, there was no mention of how remote learning would work, or what exactly would trigger the move to remote learning. Will the minister commit to immediately releasing remote learning plans to Island parents, students, and teachers so they can adequately prepare in the event we need to shift to this?
The Honourable Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I mentioned, the remote learning plans have been prepared right from the beginning. And Mr. Speaker, they have been communicated. We work closely with the unions, for example, both the Teachers Federation and CUPE, so they know exactly what's in those plans, and they help develop them, Mr. Speaker. And they have been communicated to all the principals across the island as well as the teachers across the island, Mr. Speaker, although they haven't been released publicly. And Mr. Speaker, I'll commit to the House today and to the member across that I will table our remote learning guidelines at the earliest possible date here in the House. Thank you.
The honourable member from Cornwall Meadowbanks for second supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you that the honourable member, when CUPE came before committee, they weren't exactly speaking in high regard of some of the communication that was directed their way, or lack of thereof. When the Director of Public Schools branch spoke with the media on Monday evening, there was not a clear answer how long it would take to migrate over to remote learning. Students already are experiencing learning gaps, and we've heard it, along with anxiety, stress, depression, and what have you. So it's imperative we limit the disruptions this year to ensure gaps are not further widened. Can the minister definitively tell this House and all island students, parents, and teachers how long it would take for a full migration of all schools to be remote learning?
The Honourable Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I agree with the honourable member on the points he's making. I mean, these are unprecedented times, and you know, we're doing things we've never done before. And Mr. Speaker, it's really important for our students and for our communities as a whole that we do this efficiently and well. And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to an exact timeline of how long it'll take, I don't have that answer at my fingertips, and I can bring it back. But I can tell you that we have the technology lined up, we have the resources in terms of people lined up, and I know we're going to be able to do it in a very efficient and timely fashion. Thank you.
The honourable member from Charlottetown Winslow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was an exciting day today as we flip the calendar to December 1st, and of course waking up with two small children. We're very excited to see their Advent calendar, and it's hard to believe, but in a month from today we will be entering 2021. That will also be the launch of the new fertility support program. This will be providing financial support for islanders traveling off-island for fertility treatments. Now, my wife Ashley and I, we count our blessings every day for our son Harrison and our daughter Sophia, and the joys, of course, of having children. My question is to the Minister of Health and Wellness. What will the financial criteria be to qualify for the new fertility support program?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, as outlined in their announcement on November the 6th, it will be based on income. Mr. Speaker, for anyone with a family income of under $50,000, they can receive up to the maximum of $10,000 annually for 3 years. Mr. Speaker, it's scalable. Those with family income of $50,000 up to $100,000, they'll be able to receive $7,500 again over a 3-year period, or for 3 consecutive years, or however they want to break it down to provide that service. And then for anybody with a household income of over $100,000, they'll be able to access the $5,000 grant with regards to three separate years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown, Winslow.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And now the program, of course, was a long time coming, and it is a great step forward because, again, as parents, the tremendous gift of children is something that, many may take for granted. Now, while this is welcome news of the fertility support program, there's also some disappointment that this assistance will be income-based, as the minister mentioned, as the costs for off-island treatment are the same for all islanders, no matter what their income is. Question to the same minister, at what income level will access to the fertility support program be restricted?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So it's not being restricted, as you mentioned already, honourable member. It is income-based. So even those with a household income of over $100,000 annual, they can still participate in this program and receive as much as $5,000 per year for three separate years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown, Winslow, your second supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A constituent actually reached out to me and shared her feelings on the issue. She had said that if a health service as important as wanting to start a family is not locally available and requires off-island travel, then they shouldn't be restricted from accessing the funding because of income. Question to the Minister of Health, once we get the program up and running, will you commit to reassess the financial requirements so that income is less of a barrier for islanders trying to start or grow their families?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is right. This is a program that was a long time coming. It should have been in place many, many, many years ago. So, Mr. Speaker, when we looked at developing this program, we looked across the country and did a jurisdictional scan. We come up with a plan that we felt was best suited for PEI to support as many islanders as we possibly could. In fact, Mr. Speaker, the National Association that advocates for fertility services for all Canadians singled out PEI and Quebec as the two best programs in all of Canada. And as we announced our program, they actually said in a press statement that other jurisdictions across Canada should follow the lead of PEI. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Tyne Valley, Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The new cases of COVID-19 identified this past weekend have shown us the importance and the reach needed for effective contact tracing, with one individual having 70 close contacts and 353 contacts total. And this is just from one person. Question to the Minister of Health, do we know how many cases it would take before contact tracing services become overwhelmed?
The Honourable Minister of Health and Wellness.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, to date, we've been extremely fortunate here on PEI with the low case counts and how the spread has occurred. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely proud of the work that is being done in the department through CPHO and our other assets that we've engaged to do contact tracing. It's not always easy, Mr. Speaker, but we have dedicated staff that are doing tremendous work to ensure that contact tracing and investigation of cases are concluded. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Charlottetown, Victoria Park.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was chatting with a school custodian the other day, and he was telling me about the COVID cleaners that every school, as far as I know, I may need some clarification on that, has. These extra cleaners have been lifesavers, but they are only officially hired until December 18th, as far as they know. This is a huge cause of concern and stress as custodians look ahead to when the snow flies. At that point, custodians are essentially on snow removal full-time. Question to the Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning. Are these cleaners' contracts going to be extended? Or what is the plan in this area, as we know that soon the snow will fly?
The Honourable Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the member makes a good point. I've talked to principals yesterday, last night. I talked to a custodian this morning, in fact, Mr. Speaker, and it really is a service that's much needed within the schools. And Mr. Speaker, I can definitively say here today that the additional resources that we approved starting this fall for the school year, including the custodians, will continue on to the end of the school year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Summerside South Drive, final question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Efficiency PEI rebates are getting lots of energy-efficient upgrades out there into island homes, more spending per capita than any other province. That's the good news. The bad news is islanders suffer greatly when it comes to energy poverty. Islanders who are in need of the rebates associated with doing these upgrades have been told there's still a wait time of many weeks. Christmas and winter are around the corner, and islanders have no need for the extra stress in their life caused by government processing delays, adding to the line of islanders pushed into energy poverty. A question to the Minister. Has the backlog in processing efficiency PEI rebates been dealt with? And if not, when can Islanders expect to receive this much-needed money?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation, Infrastructure and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm trying to get one of our own to ask me that for a couple of weeks, so I'm glad to get this out. We are catching up, and we have hired extra people to make that happen. We have a space for them to work in. We're quite serious about getting them done. I get updates often on it. We're confident that we'll have them all done in plenty of time so people can have their money for Christmas. As I had said publicly already once, it shouldn't have gotten to this point, and we are committed to moving forward on a three-week return from the time you put your application in. So that's a far cry from where we are today, where some people are waiting 10 weeks or even longer. They're waiting for. So we've also implemented a system where the applicant will get a call through all the stages of it. So you'll get a call whenever your application comes in telling you that we got it, so that because people didn't know if we had it or not. And then we will call you when we reviewed it. We'll call you when we send it to payment processing, so that everybody knows where it is along the way. I think communication is key to when you're dealing with the public, when you're dealing especially with their money that you're trying to get back to them. I've often said that I could sit in the legislature here this afternoon and get a bank loan and have the money in my bank account before I even rise for supper tonight, but we can't get efficiency rebates out the door in a timely fashion, and that's something that I'm 100% committed to fixing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
End of question period. Statements by ministers. The Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As we know, this year has been like no other, and it certainly has had its challenges for all Islanders. In matters of public health and public safety, Mr. Speaker, it's been abundantly clear how important it is to make information readily available in both languages for Islanders, especially those in the Acadian and Francophone community. Prince Edward Island is incredibly lucky to have someone like Dr. Morrison, who has been communicating with Islanders in both English and French. With the provincial response to COVID-19, as much as possible, we've had materials available in both languages in a timely way. And that is thanks to the hard work of some incredible public servants, Mr. Speaker, the translation team within the Acadian and Francophone Secretariat. This small but invaluable team has put in countless hours to make sure French speakers can access information in their language of choice. We recognize that in times of stress, removing linguistic barriers can help alleviate much of that situation. It is in that same spirit, Mr. Speaker, that is present in how government identifies and designates French language services throughout the French Language Services Act here in Prince Edward Island. The report that I am tabling today outlines the accomplishments achieved since the Act was implemented, and more specifically, the good work done this past year. As an example, I'm pleased to share with all members of this House that as of this summer, 4 new online library services became available to Islanders. That includes applying for a library card, requested books from another branch, suggesting a purchase to the library, and a registration form for accessible public library services. Designated French language services are important steps to supporting our Acadian and Francophone community. Mr. Speaker, as we chart a path forward for our province, we cannot and will not succeed without engaging with the people of this province, and that includes those in our other official language, Acadian and Francophone community. Throughout the community partnerships represented by the Acadian and Francophone Advisory Council, priorities are being identified and they will be aligned within our public service resources. The Council plays a vital role in how government supports this important community, and I want to thank them for all that they have done and they continue to do for their community and in working with our government. In addition to designated services, we continue to work to advance French language services in healthcare, long-term care, education, and early childhood, all important priorities to the Acadian and Francophone community in our province. If any Islander has any ideas, concerns, or questions, Mr. Speaker, please reach out to those members of our Advisory Council. They are more than happy to hear from you, and I, as Minister responsible, am always happy to hear from them. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll be tabling the annual report, and thank you very much.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I learn more and more about our island's history, I become increasingly intrigued by the place that the Acadian and Francophone people have in getting us where we are today. An extraordinary story, and one that we continue to learn. Every year we learn more about the history of the Acadians here and how they have shaped this province in a profound way. I agree with the Premier that Dr. Morrison has done a wonderful job of being able to communicate critical information to all islanders, or at least Francophone islanders here. And we must remember that increasingly we have a diverse community here, and although we have 2 official languages here in Canada, on Prince Edward Island here we have a growing number of people who communicate in a 3rd or 4th or 5th language. And we need to be always trying to improve our communications with those communities as well. When it comes to French language services, we have come a long way since the previous French language services commissioner quit about 4 or 5 years ago in frustration because things were not moving so fast. I do appreciate the Premier's, I look forward to reading the report. I've been pleasantly surprised by how we have expanded French language services over the term of this new government, let me put it that way. If I heard right from the Premier, we're only seeing, however, some new online library services as an expansion of French language services, and I imagine that in the Francophone community they were hoping for more than that. I will wait to read the report, but I do appreciate the strides that we are making, particularly compared to the stasis that existed up until a few years ago. So I appreciate that. I look forward to reading the report, and I look forward to Prince Edward Island providing an increasing diversity and number of services to this critical part of our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, as a proud Acadian, it's great to rise today to this welcome news. It is always great to see the French Language Services Act being retooled. PEI has a vibrant community of Francophones, and it is imperative that the French Language Services Act is continuously edited to ensure the needs of this community is being met. I would also like to shout out a big thank you to Dr. Morrison for her French portion of her announcements, and also the staff at Translation Services for the wonderful work they do. Congratulations to all involved for such a wonderful announcement. Félicitations.
The Honourable Minister of Economic Growth, Tourism and Culture.
Mr. Speaker, one of the ways government continually supports island artists is through our Arts Grant Program. Funding for this program happens twice a year, in the spring and fall, to support artists in their project and help them advance their learning and expertise. Mr. Speaker, there's a very positive ripple effect from the Arts Grants Program. The grant helps the artist develop their project or practice, and then in return, their work benefits others in our island communities with the art they've created. Mr. Speaker, we're committed to keeping this momentum going because art is incredibly valuable to our province's culture and economy. Today, Mr. Speaker, I am very pleased to announce the recipients of the Fall 2020 Arts Grants. They are Gerard Clarks, Vishton, Raquel Smith, Melissa Peter Paul, Deborah Montgomery, Jay Gallant, Julie Pelletier Lush, David Stewart, Rebecca Griffin, Damian Worth, Julie Bull, Renee Laprise, Richard Lush, Megan Blanchard, Somnia Lucent, and Sarah Hagan. Congratulations, and thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown, Brighton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I completely agree with the Minister of the importance of the art community and of the grants. And I congratulate all the artists who received the grants in the 2020 Arts grant season. And grants are particularly important for this community because I don't think they are as covered by all the COVID-19 grants going out to businesses and regular employees. They tend to fall through the cracks, and I think the grants will be much appreciated I look forward to see the art that results from it, and hope that your department will find some other additional ways to support artists and workers in the tourist industry. Thank you.
The honourable member from Cornwall Meadowbanks, third-party House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations to all the recipients. And Mr. Speaker, as a former tourism minister, I can tell you that people come for our views and their golf and the destination alone, but really what defines us is the cultural aspect and the fabric of that are in some of these people that are receiving these awards. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to extend my congratulations to the recipients of the Fall Art Grants. As a member who had a privilege of holding this portfolio, I have firsthand knowledge of just how vital the arts community is to our province and how vital these grants will be basically this year because of COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, art grants such as this are incredibly important to island artists. In many cases, directly help augment our artists' financial ability to pursue their craft right here in PEI. Mr. Speaker, the arts community is a competitive environment where island artists are competing against artists from across the country and around the world. It is important we as a province take every opportunity to increase funding to our provincial artists and our gig economy. Mr. Speaker, our island artists are some of the best in the world, and it's our job as elected officials to do everything we can to advocate on their behalf. And once again, congratulations on these awards. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture, Land, Minister for Justice, Public Safety and Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the second time this year that I've had the distinct honor of making an important announcement about the PEI judiciary. Earlier this year, history was made when Provincial Court Judge Krista McKay was named to the court. Today, I have the great honor to rise and announce that Judge Jeffrey Lance will be appointed the Chief Judge of the Provincial Court of Prince Edward Island. Tomorrow, at an official swearing-in ceremony, he will join his colleagues, Judge Nancy Orr, former Judge John Douglas, and the newest Chief Judge, Provincial Court Judge. I would like to take a moment to thank Judge Orr for the time she served as Chief Provincial Court Judge. She made history 5 years ago when she was named the first female Chief Provincial Court Judge, and she was part of history this year when Judge Krista McKay joined the bench. As I said, this is a year like no other. Everyone has to adapt to do business differently. I have great confidence that Judge Lance will continue to serve Islanders with fairness, thoughtfulness in his expanded role. Throughout his career, he has demonstrated that he is dedicated to encouraging healthy and thriving island communities. He has been a part of organizations like Sport PEI, the Heart and Stroke Foundation, PEI chapter of Canadian Red Cross, as well as an active member of the legal community. Mr. Speaker, I hope all members will join me in congratulating Judge Lance on his new chapter of his career. Thank you.
The Honourable Member from Summerside South Drive.
Mr. Speaker, congratulations to our new Chief Provincial Judge Lance. This is an appointment of great import to many Islanders. The voices of those we appoint to these key positions should carry great weight. I hope the concerns with access to justice raised by our Chief Justice gets the weight it deserves in our legislature. I am thinking of the recent quote of Chief Justice Jenkins. He said, quote, "I take this opportunity to lament the inaction by the legislative and executive branches of government," end quote. He went on to say that the lack of class action lawsuit legislation is a significant gap in the island's civil justice system. To quote him again, "This would be an easy fix that would provide residents of this province a needed tool for meaningful access to justice. It's been 2 decades since the identification of this need. Best wishes to this new Chief Provincial Judge in overcoming any challenges advocating for more meaningful access to justice for Islanders based on his valuable experience." Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Charlottetown West Royalty.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too want to stand and congratulate Jeff Lance. He's done a lot of work for our province, and he's fair. He's dedicated to his craft. He's a great volunteer. He's community-minded, and he's going to be an incredible addition. So, congratulations goes out to Jeff Lance, and I think our province is better served. Thank you very much.
Presenting and receiving petitions. tabling of documents. The Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I prematurely did this earlier, but I will do it now officially. I would, by command of Her Honour the Lieutenant Governor, I beg leave to table the annual report of the Acadian and Francophone Affairs French Languages Services Act for the period ending March 31st, 2020. And I move, seconded by the Minister of Health and Wellness, that the said document be now received and do lie on the table.
Shall it carry? Any more tabling of documents? The Honourable Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By leave of the House, I beg leave to table the document outlining the protocols for students who are required to remain home and isolate with related to remote learning, as discussed during question period. And I move, seconded by the Minister of Social Development and Housing, that the document do lie on the table.
Shall it carry? Carry. The Honourable Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, by leave of the House, I beg leave to table questions taken as notice from question period November 26, 2020. And I move, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning, that the said document be now received and do lie on the table.
Shall it carry? Carry. The Honourable Minister of Environment, Water and Climate Change, Minister responsible for the status of women.
Mr. Speaker, by leave of this House, I beg leave to table answer to question raised in debate on capital budget, and I move, seconded by the Minister of Finance, that the said document be now received and do lie on the table.
Shall it carry? Carry. The Honourable Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, by leave of the House, I beg leave to table capital budget, social development and housing, questions taken as notice from Friday, November 27th. And I move, seconded by the Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning, that the said document be now received and do lie on the table.
Shall it carry? Any more tabling of documents? No? Reports by committees. The Honourable Member from Charlottetown West Riding.
Mr. Speaker, as Chair of the Standing Committee on Health and Social Development, I beg leave to introduce the fourth report of the said committee entitled Committee Activities. I move, seconded by the Honourable Member from Cornwall Meadowbank, that the report be now received and do lie on the table. Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Rule 110.5 of the Rules of the Legislative Assembly, I will be moving the motion for adoption of the report on Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020.
Shall it carry? Carry. The Honourable Member from Tyne Valley, Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I please have the podium?
Like Brian down there.
Mr. Speaker, as Chair of the Special Committee on Poverty and PEI, and following the receipt of a report on recommendations in response to motion number 36, creation of a special committee of the Legislative Assembly on Poverty and PEI of the said committee on Friday, November 27th, I move, seconded by the Honourable Member from Charlottetown West Royalty, that the report of the committee now be adopted. I have the pleasure to present the final report of the Special Committee on Poverty and PEI. This committee was created by the passing of motion number 36 on July 11th, 2020, and mandated, no, that's not the right date, is it? July 11th, 2020. It's July 11th, it must be 2019, I would think. And mandated that the committee to report back to the Legislative Assembly with 3 specific goals, which were outlined in the last 2 operative clauses of motion number 36. Therefore, be it Further resolved that the committee report back to the Legislative Assembly within 12 months with recommendations to establish clear definitions and measures of poverty and a living wage for Prince Edward Island. And therefore, be it further resolved that the committee report back to the Legislative Assembly within 12 months with fully costed recommendations regarding the creation of a basic income guarantee pilot for Prince Edward Island. Over the course of the last 16 months, your committee heard from numerous subject matter experts, individuals, community groups, and government officials on poverty in Prince Edward Island. The committee gratefully acknowledges and thanks those that took the time to present their views and recommendations to the committee. Additionally, your committee is pleased to present modeling for a basic income guarantee with research assistance provided by Mr. Harvey Stevens of Winnipeg, Manitoba. The committee directed witnesses to make presentations on the 3 goals of the committee as outlined in the mandate. The committee relied greatly on their comments, suggestions, and opinions when drafting the proposed recommendations contained in the report. As a result of its public consultations, the Special Committee on Poverty in PEI has made a series of recommendations which would aid in the eradication of poverty in this province. The final report outlines the committee's activities over the last 16 months, lists the recommendations that the committee is pleased to make, and also includes an overview of those recommendations. For my remarks today, I will be reading each recommendation followed by a quick explanatory note that provides additional context. In total, the committee has made 16 recommendations in its report. After due consideration and discussion, the Special Committee on Poverty in PEI respectfully submits to the Legislative Assembly its findings and the resulting recommendations for its consideration. To the Legislative Assembly, your committee recommends. The first recommendation is regarding the committee's goal of setting definitions and measures of poverty. Recommendation 1, that the government of Prince Edward Island adopt the market basket measure as its official measure of poverty when making changes to legislation, regulations, and policy. The market basket measure is calculated by Statistics Canada based on regions and updated regularly. This recommendation was in the committee's last report, presented in the House in July 2020. It is a measure of poverty based on region and measures the cost of basic necessities. Further, the market basket measure serves as the baseline for the Special Committee on Poverty in PEI's recommendations regarding the basic income guarantee. Recommendations 2 and 3 relate to the committee's goal regarding a living wage for Prince Edward Island. A living wage is defined in the Charlottetown Living Wage 2020 report by Dr. Christine Saulnier as the hourly living wage is the rate at which a household can meet its basic needs once government transfers have been added to the family's income and deductions have been subtracted. Definition found on page 5 of the report. The calculations include the cost of necessities for the region and determines the wage needed to be earned in order to secure those necessities. Recommendation 2, that the government of Prince Edward Island consider researching ways in which it can support other areas of the province in determining a living wage. On November 2nd, 2020, the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives released a new report, Canadian Living Wage 2020, authored by Dr. Christine Saulnier, which recommends a living wage of $19.30 earned per hour. In relation to the market basket measure, your committee notes that there are 3 calculations for the province: Charlottetown, PEI population under 30,000, and PEI rural. As the work has been completed on a living wage for Charlottetown, your committee would like to encourage government to support other areas of the province in determining a living wage. While the market basket measure and a living wage are different measures, your committee suggests that government prioritize the areas as outlined in the market basket measure. PEI population under 30,000, and PEI rural. Recommendation 3, that the government of Prince Edward Island consider researching ways in which it may increase financial supports for basic needs for individuals and families that may result in lowering necessary living wage across the province. In the living wage calculations, there is a list of household expenses including food, clothing, shelter, transportation, childcare, private health insurance, emergency, education and household expenses, and social inclusion. Your committee would like to encourage government to research ways in which they can assist islanders with these costs. The higher the cost of these items, the higher the calculation will be for the living wage. There may be some areas in which government can provide additional supports that could result in a lowering necessary living wage. Some examples might be additional support in relation to childcare and housing, or a larger public transit system that could decrease transportation costs. The remaining recommendations all relate to the creation of a basic income guarantee for the province of Prince Edward Island. This category has been divided into 3 subcategories: full program recommendations, pilot program recommendations, and overall recommendations that relate to both a full program and a pilot. Recommendations 4, 5, 6, and 7 are related to implementing a full program. Your committee had much discussion regarding this set of recommendations to the Legislative Assembly. The mandate of the committee includes that the committee return a report with fully costed recommendations for a pilot. However, throughout the public consultations, your committee heard time and again from presenters the risks and dangers associated with a pilot project. As such, your committee makes the following recommendations for the implementation of a full program. Recommendation 4, that the government of Prince Edward Island begin immediate negotiations with the Government of Canada for the development and implementation of a basic income guarantee program for Prince Edward Island. As its primary recommendation, your committee strongly urges government to consider the implementation of a full basic income guarantee program for the province. Your committee is urging government to begin negotiations with the federal government to establish a partnership to cost share the establishment of a full basic income guarantee program. Almost immediately into the committee's public consultations, your committee heard from many groups and individuals that a partnership between the province and federal governments should be considered. It was even mentioned numerous times that Prince Edward Island could be a potential test site for a Canada-wide pilot project. Recommendation 5, that the government of Prince Edward Island begin immediate negotiations with the Government of Canada to ensure that all federal transfer payments that support provincially funded services and programs remain in place, regardless of any initiatives on a basic income guarantee that are implemented by the province of Prince Edward Island. Your committee recommends that as part of negotiations that need to occur between the 2 levels of government, the Government of Prince Edward Island advocate for the continuation of federal transfer payments which support a variety of provincially funded programs. Recommendation 6, that the Government of Prince Edward Island considers the following design for the implementation of a basic income guarantee program, where the guarantee is a fixed percentage of the most current market basket measure threshold, and that the guarantee is fixed at a minimum 85% of the threshold with a 50% benefit reduction rate, and that the program is available to all adult residents of the province age 18 years and above and includes seniors. The design proposed would be that the guarantee is a fixed percentage of the average of the Prince Edward Island market basket measure thresholds, a guarantee set at 85% of the average measures would essentially dominate the current social assistance rates. As for families with children under 18, the 2020 value of the Canada Child Benefit almost makes up the difference in the market basket measure thresholds between families of 2 to 6 persons. Thus, the presence of the Canada Child Benefit eliminates the need to index the guarantee by family size beyond the 2-person family. Estimated annual cost of the program. With the proposed program design, there would be approximately 50,238 eligible recipients to participate in the program, which is 39.3% of the population. The estimated gross cost of the program is $318.548 million and an estimated net cost of $259.928 million, with a total estimated savings of $58.62 million, $45.06 million from social assistance as from the 2018-2019 budget forecast, and $13.56 million from the elimination of the low income tax credit. For clarity, the estimated cost includes only the cost of the actual guarantee given to recipients and does not include any additional administrative costs associated with the establishment and execution of the program, as those design pieces are to be determined. As noted in the report, the design would have a significant impact on the rate of poverty in the province, in particular in the family type of single non-elderly recipients and single parent households. The overall poverty rate for all families would decrease from 7.4% pre-basic income guarantee to 1.7% post-basic income guarantee. Recommendation number 7, that the Government of Prince Edward Island, with the implementation of a full basic income guarantee program, ultimately eliminates social assistance. However, commits to maintaining all other social programs and services that support people with low income, regardless of the implementation of any basic income guarantee in the province. The next set of recommendations, 8 through 12, are related to implementing a pilot project. In offering the following recommendations to the Legislative Assembly, your committee wishes to strongly reiterate that if a pilot program is implemented, there needs to be a solid commitment from government that it will continue until the pilot is concluded. Recommendation 8, that in the event that the federal government is not supportive of a full program, the Government of Prince Edward Island initiate the development and implementation of a basic income guarantee pilot for Prince Edward Island. In the event that a partnership between the federal and provincial governments is not possible, Prince Edward Island should still move forward with the implementation of a basic income guarantee pilot. The cost of a pilot would be significantly lower than a full program, and the pilot can be designed in a way that would collect the appropriate data that could indicate to government potential cost savings in the areas of health, education, and justice, as well as other areas. Your committee also would like to state that it believes it is important for government to continue consulting with those who have lived experience of poverty throughout its process to initiate a basic income guarantee pilot. Recommendation number 9, that the Government of Prince Edward Island considers the following design for the implementation of a basic income guarantee pilot, where the guarantee is a fixed percentage of the most current market basket measure threshold, and that the guarantee is fixed at a minimum 85% of the threshold with a 50% benefit reduction rate, and that the program is available to all adult residents of the province age 18 years and above, and including seniors. To note, your committee is recommending that if government determines it will proceed with a pilot, that it is designed similar to the full program design. Estimated annual costs of the program. With the proposed pilot design, if a sample size of recipients of at least 3,073 and as many as 4,176 is implemented, the estimated gross costs of the program is between $19.486 million and $26.489 million. With the pilot, there are no projected estimated savings that can be shared, as supports like social assistance and the low-income tax credit would remain in place for the duration of the pilot. For clarity, the estimated cost includes only the cost of the actual guarantee given to recipients and does not include any additional administrative costs associated with the establishment and execution of the pilot, as those design pieces are to be determined. Recommendation 10, that the Government of Prince Edward Island enroll a minimum of 3,000 recipients in a pilot project to allow for statistically significant sample size. Depending on a variety of variables to be determined by government, a required sample size should vary between 3,000 and 4,200 recipients. Recommendation 11, that the Government of Prince Edward Island use a selection process for the pilot that is randomized based on tax returns on the previous year, where participants are automatically defined as eligible or not eligible. The key to selecting recipients to enroll in the pilot is to use random assignment. This ensures that all other factors that could influence the desired outcomes of the pilot are controlled for. Your committee would recommend against the community-level selection of participants that was used during the Ontario Basic Income Guarantee pilot. Such non-random selection of participants could compromise the analysis of the impact of the pilot. Of those eligible recipients not randomly selected for the pilot, an equal-sized comparison group should be randomly selected from the pool and their performance tracked as well. Recommendation 12, that the Government of Prince Edward Island administer the proposed pilot for at least 3 years, and that an arm's-length third-party agency is entrusted with the responsibility of monitoring, measuring, and evaluating the pilot project. Your committee is recommending that government administer the pilot like it would the program. A cost-effective approach to managing the pilot is to have a special unit within the Department of Finance run the pilot. 3 years is the standard length of time to operate a pilot program, and as such, your committee is recommending that the pilot run for at least that length of time. For purposes of objectivity, your committee recommends it would be preferred to contract an arm's-length third-party agency to undertake the analysis of the data and preparation of a report. The last set of recommendations, 13 through 16, provide overall suggestions that will help ensure the success of either a full program or a pilot program. Recommendation 13, that the Government of Prince Edward Island begin a legislative scan of all Prince Edward Island statutes that may require amendments to ensure that a basic income guarantee program or pilot can be successful, including changes to statutes that may be necessary in order to ensure accurate collection of data is possible to measure the success of the program or pilot. Recommendation 14, that the Government of Prince Edward Island implement additional promotion and supports to encourage and aid Islanders in filing income tax returns and to apply and update health cards to ensure their participation in the program or pilot. Recommendation 15, that the Government of Prince Edward Island ensure cross-departmental data is collected to appropriately study the effects of the program or pilot. Recommendation 16, that the Government of Prince Edward Island adopt the Special Committee's guiding principles for a basic income guarantee for Prince Edward Island as the basis of their work in relation to any program or pilot that is implemented in the province. To conclude, as Chair, I would like to express my appreciation to the members of the Special Committee on Poverty and PEI who participated in the process. I would like to thank the member for Charlottetown Belvedere, the leader of the third party, the Minister of Social Development and Housing, the member for Charlottetown West Royalty, and the Minister of Education and Lifelong Learning. I would also like to thank the Minister of Environment, Water, and Climate Change, who served as a member of the committee until June 2nd, 2020, as well as the numerous members who sat in as substitutes over the course of the committee's work. The members who participated exhibited a great spirit of collaboration and sincerity when engaging in discussion and debate during the committee's work. I would also like to take the time to offer a special thanks to all individuals who participated during the public consultation phase of this committee's work. We met with individuals, community groups, government officials, and subject matter experts from across the country during this process. They were vital to the development of the committee's recommendation and have made this report possible. Mr. Speaker, chairing this committee has truly been an incredible and humbling experience. For members from all three elected parties to come together and engage in meaningful and informed discussions, many of them quite complex and lengthy discussions, all with the goal to ensure every Islander, no matter their circumstance, can live with basic health and dignity for the well-being of individuals, families, and communities. Sorry, a little emotional. Maybe the first person to get emotional reading a committee report. It's incredible. It was a great honor and more than I could have possibly hoped for as chair of this committee. And I am so very proud to have been part of this committee and to present this report to the legislature. This report effectively concludes the work of the Special Committee on Poverty in PEI. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the report? No? Shall the report carry? Okay, moving on. Reports, introduction of government bills. Government motions. Orders of the day, government. The Honorable Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister of Health, that the second order of the day be now read.
Shall it carry?
Order number 2, consideration of the capital estimates in committee.
The Honorable Minister of Finance, Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, seconded by the Honourable Minister of Health, that this House do now resolve itself into Committee of the Whole House to take into consideration capital supplied to Her Majesty.
Shall it carry? The Honourable Member from Tignish Palmer Road, Deputy Speaker, to chair the Committee of the Whole, please.
The House is now in a Committee of the Whole House to consider the grant of capital supply to Her Majesty. Request has been made to bring a stranger onto the floor. Shall it be granted? Honourable members, we had left off on page 23, capital expenditure for social development housing. The last section, capital improvements, has been read and is still presently under discussion. Please state your name and title for Hansard.
Gordon McFadgen, Assistant Secretary to Treasury Board.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there any questions? Summerside, South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. I guess we'll just pick up where we left off here. We were talking about the property at the old Somerset Manor and the 32-unit family affordable housing units that's going up there. So we're going to have to rezone that from institutional to R3 or R4, I'm told, by City Council. And I was just wondering if we know which one we're going to be trying to get that rezoned to, R3 or R4.
We're not aware of that. It's not part of the actual budget, the zoning.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. So I've also been told that we're just in the planning stages of this. So one of the things I've been trying to get at here with this particular property is how prime real estate it is and how we don't really want to waste any space within it. So do we have any plans drawn up for this building as of yet?
No, I believe this particular project has just gone to the RFP stage for design.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. So it is still possible that this would be built up and not out, and we don't have those finalized.
I would say that the site would be considered so that, you know, the most use can be made of the site. They'll never try to put it right in the middle of the site and kind of forego whatever other useful parcels or properties could be built on the site.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. So did you say the RFP is out now?
I believe the department received authority to go to RFP for architectural services.
Summerside South Drive.
Thank you, Chair. So is that public, something that I could find on the website?
I believe so.
Summerside South Drive.
Good. So there was a Treasury Board decision back in May 2019 to stop issuing grants, that rent subsidies that were going on particularly for Independence Place, but some other buildings as well. And I'm just wondering, when we're building something like new seniors housing that's going up in nearby district, up by the hospital there, the new Somerset Manor and the like, the new 32 new seniors units that we're still working on, do we reach out to folks that are probably going to be losing their affordable housing to see if they would want to be at the front of the list for coming into these new units we're creating?
I'm sure that that's done through social development housing. There is a list, and they would prioritize, you know, where people are on that list. I don't know if you can request that you go into that particular unit.
I have an intervention from the Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to provide clarity with regard to the comment of the member stating that they would be losing their affordable units. As the member, I do believe, is aware, contracts for affordable housing with individual developers, some of them may have been in place a number of years ago, those expire. When they do expire, the rent on those individual units, they are bound to the increases that are allowed under Island Regulatory and Appeals Commission, which for this year is 1%. And of course, in the event that the landlord feels that, as an organization, or the landlord feels that they are warranted in an increase of greater than 1%, they can go to IRAC. In the event that it was approved to increase the rental amount by more than 1%, and the individuals who are presently in the units, if it puts them in a position of being in core need of housing with regard to the affordability end of it, and again, that's at the 30% level, then we would be in a position as a department to supplement those individuals by way of a mobile rental voucher, enabling them to stay in the same apartment. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Summerside South Drive.
Thanks, Chair. I'm fine for now.
Leader of the third party. Leader of the third party.
Oh, okay, thanks. I wasn't sleeping, I was reading. Question, just...
That's what they all say.
So this property in Summerside, what kind of housing is proposed to go there?
Seniors, I believe.
It's actually, I believe, a 32-unit family housing.
It's seniors.
I think it's family housing.
Is it?
So
seniors. Leader of the third party?
So
family
was
housing.
there any discussion with the private sector to maybe build more seniors housing and use that site for an additional long-term care facility with the need we have for long-term care beds in the province?
Not that we're aware of.
Leader of the third party.
So it's always been that discussion from the get-go that it would be subsidized rentals?
When the old Somerset Manor was torn down and taken off the site, there was a period of time where the land was vacant. And I know there was some discussion within government as to what to go back on that site. The site was owned by the Housing Corporation, so they had first right to put units on that building, and I think they went ahead and exercised that right to kind of occupy the space.
So they had always,
Leader of the third party?
sorry, Chair, they had always owned the property?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for now, thanks.
You're welcome. Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So is this a section where I can ask about the housing component of the healthcare hubs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I would like to know more about that.
Get the right note here. I don't have a tremendous amount of information for sure, but I believe that they're planning on, there's some land that is also owned by the Housing Corporation in Alberton that they're planning on constructing a 10-unit. I'm just looking whether it's mixed or seniors housing. I say mixed family and seniors, but I'm going to try to find that note here. And in the process of the build there, we're going to construct enough space to fit up the community health center on that site as well.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I would like to get a better sense, if you can bring that back, of what type of housing it will be. As I mentioned before, it would be rather unusual just in terms of other models for healthcare hubs to have housing that isn't a long-term care or something that's directly connected to a health facility where people are in need or would be requiring healthcare services on a regular basis. So I'd be interested to know more about that. Are there any, is there a housing component to the Montague location?
No, there's no housing component for the Montague planned at this time.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
And how much, is? Belfast. Oh, they did say they would consider Morel too. That's true, I heard that. So what is the cost of the 10 units in Alberton?
Planned cost at this point in time is $6.2 million.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, and is that in any way cost shared with the federal government, or is it not?
No, there's no program available at this time for that particular location.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think that's all for now. I would like to know more about it, but we don't have that information yet, so.
The note I have is social housing, so there's no more specific than seniors and or families, so.
Would also welcome any sort of intervention. No. Okay.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Chair. So from the platform, the PC platform, under the housing section there, it says that the government will partner with private sector cooperatives and non-profit groups to deliver 1,200 additional affordable rental units in the next 5 years. So that's not 1,200 units, 1,200 affordable units, which requires, if you're partnering with the private sector and cooperatives and non-profits, inclusionary zoning to mandate that a certain percentage of the build will be indeed affordable housing. Our caucus visited a build in Summerside, large build on the waterfront. Everybody will know what I'm talking about, where a very large percentage, I believe it was 40% of the building was going to be affordable. But I'm wondering where we are. That over 5 years to deliver 1,200 would require 240 affordable units a year. I'm wondering where we are this year and what builds are anticipated that will have that number of affordable units in them.
Well, we can bring that information back, Honourable Member. I don't have all of the details on that. Part of, I think, that would be the rental vouchers as well, which would make units affordable. So.
Leader of the Opposition.
But this, it says to deliver 1,200 additional affordable rental units. So that's not just giving somebody more money to make an unaffordable unit affordable, but I read that to mean it's to build 1,200. Is that not what was meant here?
It says to develop affordable units?
To deliver 1,200 additional
Well,
affordable rental units.
I think the people that are getting those rental vouchers who are now able to access affordable housing, whether it's through, housing provided by the government or housing that's done through a rental voucher, makes it affordable.
Leader of the Opposition.
Okay. The next line in this section of the platform says use vacant government land for affordable housing projects, and a really important aspect of this, and we've just had a number of questions about the development in Summerside, but housing is not just an urban issue. There are many parts of rural Prince Edward Island where we desperately need affordable housing too. And in my own district, a developer has a proposition in New Haven for some affordable units. I'm not sure how far it is advanced, but the problem there is accessing land. And I know when the Plan B highway was being developed there, a large amount of land in that area was expropriated. What is the process? It says vacant government land. Now, it's certainly owned by government. What is the process for a developer or a cooperative to come forward to access that vacant government land?
Honourable Member, that's not really in the purview of the capital budget as far as process. I'd be happy to bring it back. And if we're going to quote from platforms, I might like to quote from the Green Party platform, who said they were going to spend $5 million on affordable housing in your platform. And if you look at what we're doing, and we said we could always do more, well, we are doing more and we'll continue to do more. So I think to look at 2020, 2021, 2022, we're doing $11,847,000. 22, 23, we're doing $17 million. So if we're going to quote platforms, I'll maybe throw that back at you that the Green platform said $5 million.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Chair. And I know that a member of the third party quoted that number as well. And I don't want to get into a fight here about platforms, but I can tell you. Let's be clear here. We are not the government. No. You are the government. You have made many spending promises. Both in the platform and beyond. You have the capacity and the capability and the authority to change those spending priorities every single year. We are in the middle of a housing crisis, and we see the amount of money that your government is devoting to housing decreased. Are you saying that the housing crisis is over?
No, I'm not saying that, Honourable Member. And one of the reasons it was decreased in this particular year, and you're well aware of that, is because of COVID and the ability to finish plans that were in process during COVID. We continue to add more housing. We know that there is a need for housing, and we are continuing to add to the budget. If you look there, you can see.
Leader of the Opposition.
I think it's absolutely right for the opposition to quote back to government promises made in their platform, particularly those that have not been satisfied. It's all very well for you to smile and quote back what we had in our platform, but we are not government. And I can assure you, had we become government and the scope of the housing problem was revealed to us as it currently is, that $5 million would not have stayed at that figure, because we would be a government that would respond to the crisis of the day. My question is regarding vacant government land, and it's an important question with the increasingly vigorous assertion of Aboriginal rights. Vacant land owned by the Crown is not as readily perhaps available as it might be. And I'm asking about a particular piece of land here. I'm asking for the process, and I understand that's perhaps beyond the scope here, but given that the use of vacant land, of Crown land, is specifically mentioned in your platform, have you done any study to look at the complexity now of upholding that promise?
Well, Honourable Member, I think with any plan to utilize government land, we realize that there is a duty to consult, and we continue to do that. And there are, I think, some projects maybe on the table right now, not necessarily for housing, but for a number of different issues that have come forward, and we are working with the Aboriginal community to ensure that we do the duty to consult. And really, when it's put forward to whomever looks after it through the Indigenous community, we put forward to them and we wait for their response, and that's all we can do. Doesn't seem to be a time limit on how quickly they can respond. But with the housing project, we did have $45,000 per door for developers to access to ensure that we'd have more affordable housing. And really, Honourable Member, part of the reason we underspend is because we can't get contractors available to build. And contractors that were building didn't access that $45,000 a door as readily as we thought they would. And whether it's because they're too busy or because they didn't want to do the affordable housing, I can't comment. That's the private sector. But the option was there for any community that was in need of housing, that there was $45,000 per door for a private developer to do the work.
Leader of the Opposition.
I'm good, thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. O'Leary Inverness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to go back a little bit more on the healthcare hubs, because like I think it was stated in the paper, it is a bit murky and you haven't really clarified a lot of it here. So I want to go through the Alberton one a bit here again. So it's a 10-unit, and I'm assuming independent seniors housing, is that correct?
We haven't clarified that, Honourable Member. It's social housing is all we understand.
O'Leary Inverness.
Okay, and then you're going to add a health center to that. So what's going to happen with the existing health center that's in the hospital, where the doctors are working out of now? Are they going to move over to there, and does that create a vacancy there, or?
The information for the health center for the West and in the Alberton area, and I have read this into the record previously, they were planning for a fit-up that social development housing would build when the housing component gets built, so it would be a structure that gets built for health to then fit up their space of it, and then health will pay social development housing some rent for that space, but the space would be built for 5 physician positions, so I presume that that's all the positions in that community that would be going to the hub or to the community health center. They would be looking to relocate and integrate the mental health and addiction services, and as well the public health and home care services, all under one roof for that particular model to work effectively.
O'Leary Inverness.
So, but the other 2 facilities aren't going to have any housing, so there's a kind of a disjointed approach here to the way these hubs are going to look. They're all going to be different, which seems a bit inconsistent, I guess would be my term.
I think part of that is depending on where the hub is going and what's already available there. That will all be part of, what goes into the plan. Montague, I know now, has a clinic and there is a hospital, but how that's going to be integrated, I don't have all the details. But depending on what the location is will determine, what is needed, and also what the residents need.
O'Leary Inverness.
So I guess what I'm trying to get a handle on here, so if you're looking at that combination, you're really not adding a whole lot new, because you're going to replace basically the one that's currently there. And when I look at the issue around housing, especially Alberton and O'Leary, we've seen actually the private industry, private developers have put up a lot of, George McNeilly I can think of in the Alberton area, and Joey Carragher, Stuart McDonald, they've all put up a lot in the O'Leary area. Now, some of those programs are on their own land, and they do get some assistance and incentive to put housing on. They fill up rather quickly. But it doesn't seem like if you were going with seniors housing, I sort of get that. If you're looking at going with family housing, like I say, then the private sector, maybe that's where the issue is, because senior housing doesn't seem to be the problem in Alberton and O'Leary. So family housing does seem to be a little bit, because it has other complications that some landlords tend to try to avoid, I guess would be the term. So then will these housing units be managed through like the Alberton Housing Authority? Or is that, how are you doing that?
I think the intent is they would be units owned by the Housing Corporation, like the other 1,500 or so units that they have under their management currently.
Right. Okay.
O'Leary Inverness.
So I guess that's where ultimately it's, if you're going to do it as a government entity, you're going to manage these on government land. I kind of get that side of it, but I really question whether this is kind of what maybe the minister had envisioned for a healthcare hub. It just seems a little bit different. It doesn't seem like it's really that new or replacing anything other than a new facility for the physicians that are already there. And like I say, from the housing issue, you seem to be targeting the wrong group, in my opinion, from what as an MLA from O'Leary would see it. And I know this is an Albert, and I'll let the minister to reply to that because he's much more in tune maybe in that riding than mine. But it's the family housing that seems to be the challenge, not so much the seniors.
Yeah. Honourable Member, there's no confirmation that it is seniors housing.
Oh, okay.
It's affordable housing.
I have an intervention from the Minister of Social Development and Housing.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, honourable members, for indicating that I'm much more in tune with my area than I would be in yours. But I think that the honourable member and myself are both quite in tune with the whole West Prince area. Just wanted to make reference or provide a little bit of clarity to one of the comments that the member had made, and that was with regard to the housing boards. So the housing boards, they have responsibility with regard to family housing units. With regard to seniors affordable units under the PEI Housing Corporation, it is completely under the guise and the guidelines of the Housing Corporation itself. So just wanted to provide a bit of clarity on that, Chair. Thank you.
You're welcome. O'Leary Inverness.
Well, I guess that's just, I'm trying to get that same clarity. So like I said, if it is family units, then Albert, which is why I asked that question, I guess, in that regard. And like I say, I guess the answer is we don't know in either case. But that also makes it a pretty big challenge in, once again, supporting a budget, a capital budget, when you have so little information of which way this is going. And but, I'm not saying we don't need housing, but I just wonder if government resources are well spent, especially with seniors housing. I think there's a lot of construction going on in that regard. It seems like there's those facilities get vacant, just a little bit of a subsidy. They do it on their own land. You can take your own land, your government land, which there are stipulations on how you're going to be able to use that because of Indigenous issues and things of that nature. And, I'd utilize it for maybe other purposes. So I think I just wanted to make that comment, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
You're welcome. Mermaid Stratford.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to touch on the 45,000 per door number again. Is there criteria around that as to where in the province that can be used?
It's actually part of the operating budget.
Oh.
Mermaid Stratford.
But it is part of the housing.
Because we were just talking about that, correct?
Well, we were talking about housing and how we're providing alternatives for Islanders for housing, and one of the ways of doing that is through this $45,000 per door that there wasn't great uptake on from what I remember, but it is operating.
Mermaid Stratford.
Okay, so because it's operating, I'll just leave this with you. My understanding is that somebody tried to use it in Mermaid, but they were told that there wasn't a requirement for units in Mermaid, so therefore it was turned down. So I would just want to kind of flag that to you, that maybe the uptake is because people haven't been able to actually access it for whatever reason.
Yep.
Chair, I'm going to ask your indulgence for a second. Over the last couple of days, and first of all, I'd like to recognize the government departments that did table documents with questions taken as notice from the capital budget. There was 3, and social development, housing, education, and environment, water, and climate change. I was wondering if I can go back and ask questions based on those documents that were tabled.
Do you have many questions?
No.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to go back to education and lifelong learning for a moment, if that's
We'll go
okay.
back to everyone then.
So we had asked questions around what the funding was to be used for. And there were, in the list of the capital repairs priorities, there was a number of schools that had that were listed for heating modifications or ventilation modifications, and I believe there's 4 listed. Has there been any kind of analysis on all of our school system as to what the ventilation system is like currently? And I'm actually looking at mechanical ventilation at this point in time.
That's not something that we have in our purview here as far as information, but we can bring that back.
Okay.
Member Stratford?
So my understanding in Nova Scotia, there's 141 schools, and when they did their assessment on the schools, 41 came back that they didn't have mechanical ventilation. And what that means, especially during COVID, is in order for you to reduce the risk of spread within the classroom, you'd have to bring in ventilation, whether it's opening a window or what have you. And I'm wondering how many schools, in addition to possibly what's listed here as these 4, might be in that situation.
Okay, we can bring that back.
Mermaid Stratford?
Thank you, Chair. Because that was also on the news this morning with Ontario identifying it as an issue. Because as we're hitting the winter months, we can't actually keep the windows open because we'll freeze our children out of their classrooms if it is an issue with many places. And if that is the case, one of the solutions is a HEPA filter, that type of filtration system. And I'd be interested in knowing, have we considered that in our capital estimates? And how many classes? And for that matter, with the issue that we just had with the school buses, the 2 in particular for Charlottetown Rural, again, it's the same situation. If you leave the windows open, that creates a less risk of spread, but you can't do that all winter. So there is studies that actually say bus runs shouldn't be any more than 15 minutes, which I'd be interested in knowing with our busing situation, has that been addressed through the capital budget, especially because COVID's not going anywhere for a while, right? So again, if you could bring that back, that would be great. I did want to ask a question on the environment tabling that happened this morning. So there was a tabling for, the question was, there is a projected increase in lab equipment in 2022, 2023. And what was that for? And it was identified that it's for basically to analyze bulk tank raw milk samples. So does that say that anything at the analytics lab is funded out of environment, water, and climate change? Has that always been the case?
We can bring it back.
Mermaid Stratford?
Okay, I'm getting nodding from the other. Okay.
Are you sure you want to bring it back? Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And we can move on. Thank you for letting me go back.
You're welcome. Charlottetown Belvedere.
Thank you, Chair. Back to the housing piece, Minister raised it, so I'm going to follow up on it, which is the $45,000 per door. I get it's inoperational, but it is actually impacting, you know, the availability of then investments in affordable housing. And, you know, we met with a developer as recently as last week who told us that they've been denied access to that fund. So I sort of reiterate again, and maybe this could be an intervention, Chair, I don't know, but there seems to be a really big gap between the intention of that fund and the actual usage of that fund, including that it was frozen for a number of months and not available to any developer at all. So I guess there's 2 parts to this, Chair. One of them is, you know, again, a criteria for access to that. Clearly, if people aren't applying, it's not that they don't want to, maybe it's that it's not actually accessible. And then the second part of that is, well, the units that are funded in that through that route don't necessarily need to belong to government. It's about a contract of agreement. So who is making those decisions, and how can that be improved? And perhaps I'll leave it there, Chair.
I'm not quite sure I understood the second part of the question. I got the first for sure, the criteria
Okay, maybe we'll go with
for
the first part.
accessing affordable. I just don't get the second
Excuse
part.
me, maybe we can go with the first part.
For sure, we can bring that back. I don't have those criteria here with me.
Charlottetown Brighton. Oh, sorry, Belvedere.
That's okay, Chair. Okay, so the second part of that was, this is a piece of, if government isn't intending to invest sufficiently in affordable housing development, by providing this per door subsidy to developers, they can increase the capacity for affordable housing. Is the government prepared to be flexible with that fund to allow that developers to get on board and immediately increase the amount of affordable housing that's available?
Honourable Member, I will say that fund was for housing across Prince Edward Island, and I think that there was a number of back and forths with, what community would this really benefit, and can we get a developer in that community to do it? You know, it was about looking at the numbers across Prince Edward Island and ensuring that there are a number of bills in Charlottetown and area right now by private developers, and we know that through the rent subsidies that some of those are accessible, and we're also concerned about where we're going with the vacancy rate on Prince Edward Island as well.
Charlottetown Belvedere.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I think the stranger on the floor is presuming that I'm speaking about Charlottetown. I'm actually speaking about a program which is available provincially, and as the critic for housing on a provincial basis, the developers that I've been speaking to are actually not in Charlottetown that are looking to be able to access this, and they've been denied. They've been denied because they were told that there was no need for development in the areas where they were, which were rural. They were told that their development wouldn't meet the criteria. They were told that the program no longer was in its place. There's a whole range of reasons, but the developers from across the province have been trying to access this fund and generally not getting success. So this isn't a Charlottetown issue. This is a provincial issue, and the fund should be supporting developments of all kinds in a creative way. So, question again, Chair. Why, if this is about increasing the capacity for affordable housing in the province, why isn't this a priority for this government?
Honourable Member, it is a priority, and we've shown that we have increased the budget by quite a bit over the last couple of years, and there was not underspend, if you want to call it, this year, but that had to do with COVID and the ability for contractors and developers to actually get the building done. The availability or where the demand is for housing would be looked through social development and housing, and they know where their numbers are. And in some ways, I would also agree with the member that the numbers that they have for areas are not maybe accurate, because for my own community or my own district in Murray River, Murray Harbour, Belfast, there could be people there who are not on the housing list for Murray Harbour, Belfast, because there's no housing there at all, so they're on the list for Montague, or they're on the list for Charlottetown, and they don't want to go to Montague or Charlottetown. But that's not an option. So, but yet there's no contractor who came forward, because I was pushing to try and find a private developer who would build in the community, and you know, the numbers don't add up because people aren't on the list for those communities. They're on the list for Montague because there's no housing. So it's a very complicated and complex puzzle, I guess is the way you put it, and we want to make sure that we are there for all Islanders. My other concern too is with the number of people who are on this list. I mean, I know some in my own community are on that list. They're still in their own home, but they don't want to be in their own home. They want to be in an apartment, you know, could be a senior, but they still are in their own home. They're not homeless. So taking all that into consideration is really difficult, and you try and put your priorities in the order they need to be in, but yet I would love to see housing in Belfast, and I know it would be full. We have a private developer who just put up 12 units that were full before. They're still not open and they're full. So it's a complex issue, and we continue to work with private developers and with government to see how we can you know, lessen the number.
Charlottetown Belvedere.
Thank you, Chair. And I really appreciate that level of candour. I think you've made a perfect case for why we need a cross-departmental housing team, because you're talking about land planning usage, you're talking about sort of cross-departmental recognition of where, you know, gathering data and making decisions that are informed by the data, working with developers for more creative solutions. Perhaps, you know, I think it makes a really strong case for that when we only make investments in terms of here's a chunk of money to do this thing that we know, then we're missing all the things that we don't know. And meanwhile, islanders are saying, why aren't you doing this? And we've got a really big gap in between those two pieces. And obviously developers who are managing from a private sector financial perspective are looking for whatever they can get, but it's not cost effective for them to build affordable housing unless there's an incentive in place. So Chair, I would ask that we again, on behalf of islanders and the developers that genuinely want to meet that need, can we ensure that fund for the per door subsidy is open, and that we are open and creative to developers who want to come forward and access that. And that could include an existing development where some of the units get that per door. There's a lot of different creative solutions, but it could actually really make the difference, particularly with private developers that already have agreement and planning permission to go. Because if we can even get 10%, 15% of those units as they're built to come onto the affordable market, where we're talking about rent geared to income, that per door subsidy will be the difference between that happening or not. But Minister, when the doors are closed, when they go to try and have that meeting to ask, then yeah, the message you're going to get is nobody's interested. When actually, perhaps the message is we don't know how to connect these two pieces of the story. And so I'm genuinely asking on behalf of islanders and the developers and the department, can we try and make that bridge happen?
And I appreciate that. The one comment I will make, and we've experienced it over the last year, was there are developers have been very, very busy, and this did not seem to be part of their priorities for a number of them, and I'm speaking in general. But the other issue that we found was a number of developers do not want subsidized housing in their building, and we can't change that. So that's when we have to look to government to come be creative. But again, we know that construction across the province is maxed out right now, and we don't want to heat up the market any more than it is, but yet we need to provide what is needed for islanders, and we'll continue to do that.
Charlottetown Belvedere.
Thank you, Chair. Probably a conversation for a different point. I appreciate in the capital budget, not the best place to have it, but I would make a comment that as complex as housing is, that it gets even more complex when we talk about heating and cooling the market, and there is as much damage being done in terms of heating the market by rent subsidies through supplements, which go directly to landlords and maintain rates, as there is in providing affordable housing. I absolutely do hear on a regular basis unfortunately the NIMBY approach, they're not in my backyard or not in my building. And some of the best approaches to that are basically where you can't tell the difference because the housing is fully integrated, and who is getting a subsidy or not, who is getting rent geared to income or not, is not apparent. Housing co-ops are really good at that. And so again, it comes back to, if it was easy, we would have been able to fix it already. But not approaching it doesn't fix it. So, Chair, I appreciate your indulgence in being able to sort of come back to that topic on the per door subsidy. And I look forward to us being able to speak further about this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So on Friday, the Minister for Health and Wellness tabled a very large and detailed document, the Operational Plan, Functional Program, and Master Plan for the Mental Health and Addiction System. It's over 700 pages and made for a really fun weekend for me. That is the truth. So I do have a question from that report that I believe can fall under this section of the budget. So page 29 of that report refers to an island-wide mental health and addictions housing model, including structured, transitional, and residential housing that helps to bring individuals back to their own communities, families, and friends under a coordinated mental health and addictions housing continuum. So is this reflected in any way in this section or in this budget?
What we have here is just the actual dollar figure for the mental health campus, and am I right, Gordon? Is there anything else there?
Within the 8 units that were being proposed, there were some housing units for Charlottetown and Summerside, I believe. And they may be referring to some of that through that report.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. So do we know if decisions have been made around housing developments, particularly in relation to mental health and addictions, based on a model or this model referred to in the report?
Honourable Member, I did not read the report as you did on the weekend, but all I can do is say we'll bring back what was implied by that.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Chair. And I do have other questions in relation to that report for the section Health and Wellness as well as Health PEI. Are we able to go back to those sections?
Honourable Member, we had passed, I think, carried two sections last week with the understanding that once more information was tabled, we could go back with questions, but try to keep them, if you can, to a minimum.
Like not a question on every page of the report? I'll do my best. Okay.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
So back to health and wellness. So on page 107 of the report, this is a quote, there's an initiative with the Department of Health and Wellness to procure a provincial EMR, but it's in very early stages. Now, this report was from February 2020, so we've heard that the EMR was delayed due to COVID, but this report was actually just before COVID, and it refers to the EMR process, procurement process, as being in the very early stages. So I'm confused. What does that mean? And can you help me make sense of the delays in the EMR with this context?
I can't, Honourable Member, but we will make note, and if you want to submit your questions together, we'll be happy to take them back to the department.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. I've submitted written questions before, and they've often not been answered, so I think we'll just go ahead and keep on with this. I got a few more to go. Now going to Health PEI. So page 162 refers to a wireless network. So public Wi-Fi should be in all facilities for clients and their families. I'm wondering, did this happen, and is it budgeted for? If not, is it budgeted for in this in future years?
Public Wi-Fi in housing, or
for all facilities for clients and their families. So any health PEI facility is what they're referring to.
Okay, we'll bring it back.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
It also talks about the community healthcare centers a little bit in that report, and it specifies, establishing 4 to 5 healthcare centers. They refer to them as community health centers. So are these the hubs that were referred to in the capital budget, and will there be 4 to 5?
Again, we can bring that back.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
And at any time, absolutely welcome an intervention to get some of these answers. Okay, so we know that there's a 3-week wait for the detox program. This is something I've heard again and again. And in this report, it talks about 4 detox beds being added in the east and 4 in the west. So I'm wondering, where will these new community detox beds be established, and when will they be established?
Gord is writing down the questions as we speak.
Now, to be fair, when you're looking at this particular report, there is a fair mix of capital and operational requirements when you start talking about.
These are capital questions, though, I believe.
No, I understand that, but
yeah.
the actual, when you're talking about new beds as well, that would be sometimes staffing and some of the other, there may be a location for it already, but there may be staffing requirements coming forward in future operating budgets.
Tyne Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, yeah, I would definitely like follow up on that, since it is most certainly a need, and anyone having to wait 3 weeks to enter the detox program who's in need is simply not reasonable and is not going to be beneficial to individuals. So this report, rightly so, calls on more beds, particularly in the east and the west, so that all islanders can have access if needed, and I think it's really important that we follow through with that. So page 269 of the report, so there's I'm just going to quote this one. A further major assumption in changes to service delivery is that long-term care homes across PEI enhance their capacity to provide care to residents with dementia. Residents who need to be admitted to the new acute mental health and addictions facility will be stabilized and returned to their long-term care home with any additional input as needed to their care plan at the home. So just in terms of additional capacity, expanding capacity in long-term care homes across PEI for residents with dementia, is there any investment, capital investment, to make that happen?
There's no additional capacity for sure, and whether when you enhance capacity, it doesn't necessarily, I don't think, mean add capacity, because that could be through additional training, additional kind of organizational design within a facility to manage the care of dementia patients.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
Yes, partly, certainly, but there's also a capital commitment to making sure that beds are appropriately suited to facilitate dementia care. There's a lot of considerations, as was noted, with dementia patients that were being housed in Unit 9. There were certainly considerations that that particular unit was well suited for dementia care. So in order to expand capacity in long-term care facilities for dementia care, capital investment would be needed, along with all of the other investments that you just mentioned. So I guess we will just wait and see if there's more information on that to be brought back. So page 31, under capital repairs, the Prince County Hospital Emergency Department may require some physical renovations to increase privacy for mental health and addiction service needs. Is that, has that been accounted for in the budget?
Yes, that has.
Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, and how much, what was done and what, or what will be done, and what are the costs of that?
Bear with me while I flip back to that section to try to gather some of the information. And I'm not, we didn't have a detailed breakdown of all the components for the 8, I think we was talking about 8 facility pieces within the mental health program. Definitely repairs to and upgrades to the QEH and the PCH were included, but I don't think I have a detailed cost to that particular component.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, so thank you, Chair. So this is why it's really important to have this detailed information that's contained in this report, because now I know what the requirements are, what the recommendations are based on this very well put together report, very thorough report. And it really helps me to better understand, as well as all members of this legislature, where capital expenditures actually, whether or not they align with those recommendations. So, I would like to have that information as well. Another thing to note is that QEH, in this report, it says that QEH is expected to have a PUC on site, and that beds for children and adolescents in need of mental health and addictions treatment will be on site as well. So is this also reflected in the capital budget, renovations to make this a reality?
As I had previously indicated, there is some renovation scheduled for the QEH, the scope of which I don't have any details on what is contained.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
Okay, so yeah, I would really appreciate that information being brought back. On page 234, and I'm just going to throw this out there to see if we can get any clarity, but it's appendix 1.21, it just says reserved, and the rest of the page is blank. I don't know what that is, so you don't know either. No? I just really want to know what was on that page. Okay.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
All right. Page 690, so this was really interesting. So this report was from February 2020, clearly dated, and there's actually a timeline from that point to when this report would say we should have shovels in the ground on the new mental health hospital, and it's 18 months. So I'm wondering why the discrepancy between what this report recommends in terms of the new mental health hospital build and the timelines that have been presented so far. It's a huge difference.
Again, we'll bring that back. I'm not sure why that was stated in the report.
Okay.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
I also want to note that, and if I'm misunderstanding these timelines, I again welcome an intervention, but it's at month 15, that's when the tender is supposed to be ready to go out. So it's not a matter of, blaming the, pressures on construction right now, because we haven't even gotten to that stage. So So yeah, I would really like some clarity on that, because the difference between 18 months and shovels in the ground in 2023 is 18 months from February 2020 versus shovels in the ground in 2023. It's very different. I would need further explanation of why that's the case. Yeah, okay, so page 705 and 706, list of all contributors. It doesn't break down title or capacity. It would be nice to know what kind of representation there was. For example, how many of those names belong to patient advocates with lived experience or members of the BIPOC community, youth, etc. None of that information is there. Can I ask for that information, just so that I know who was involved in this, contributed to this, the decisions around capital budget and how it would be spent in mental health and addictions?
We'll bring that back.
Okay.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
And just one last question for now, related specifically to the capital budget. Other questions, as you noted, outside of the scope. Page 715, 715 and 717. It outlines heating and cooling. So is it the government's plan to reduce its carbon footprint? Is the government's plan to reduce its carbon footprint going to affect this? Will the building need to have a green heating source, and is that going to impact the plans as presented?
I'll have to take a look at the reference to see exactly what it's pertaining to.
Okay.
Time Valley Sherbrooke.
All right, that's all for now, Chair. Thank you.
Charlottetown West Royalty.
Thank you, Chair. In a document back, here I'm looking at that was tabled about housing. It says, how has COVID affected the timelines for the department housing units under the construction and planning for new units? And it said everything got pushed back 3 to 4 months. And it said some money here was allocated to the temporary rental assistance benefit. Is that true? Did some money go to that instead of the builds when COVID pushed things back, or to the?
If there was money allocated, it would be from the operating budget, not the capital.
Charlottetown West Royalty.
Yeah, no, because it has a bunch of, it talks about COVID and the pushback, and it said 3 to 4 months. When builds like that get pushed back 3 to 4 months, does that affect? We only have a short season to build. Does that mean that it's basically a lot of these builds got pushed back an entire year? Is that correct, or for an entire 2 or 3 month cycle?
For sure, the pandemic timing was not great for the construction season.
Yeah.
There was a lot of concern, obviously, in the time that we would be kind of getting that information going, and it was a while before normal business processes got up and going again within the government. So that's a fair comment that we potentially missed the better part of the building season as a result of COVID.
Yeah.
Charlottetown West Royalty.
And the 48 units you had in Charlottetown, I thought a lot about that, and I mean, 48 units, I think you said that there's no room for 48 units because of land development, like to build 40 units in one place. Like, how is that being broken down, and when should we expect some construction on those units, or where are they? I could go on with questions about those.
Well, the funding related to the remaining units within last year's 100, which those 48 were part of that, is into 22, 23, and kind of winding up in 23, 24, but just a small portion of it. So the next 2 years would be when they would be looking to get the Summerside units, the Morel units, the Georgetown units, and then the 48 in Charlottetown completed over the next 2 fiscal years.
Charlottetown West Royalty.
So we're going to have to wait, Charlottetown's going to have to wait for 22, 23, but there's no land allocated with that, and we don't know where those units are going.
I believe I didn't say there was no land. I said there is some housing corporation land that they're looking at right now, but definitely land is tight in Charlottetown.
Okay.
Charlottetown West Royalty.
So they are looking at land, but there's no concept of what that, is it going to be a standalone unit or attached to?
The design hasn't been completed for those particular units.
Charlottetown West Royalty.
Okay. looking at the list of this in the same document, Appendix A showed a list of all the renovations that $800,000 was. It's in Appendix A. So I remember you talking about a specific. There was some boiler repairs going on throughout the province, but there's no funding attached to any of these, or no start dates or anything. Do you know how, like, I'm just trying to say how much of that $800,000 is going to get spread out with different units that need them the most across the province?
Again, I think the Housing Corporation takes a practical look at when work can get done based on the needs that were presented. Just looking at the same list that you were talking about, an inside elevator upgrade at Haviland Court could be tendered and kind of done, you know, perhaps not during the winter months when, you know, you're taking the stairs, or maybe winters are fine, but definitely when you get into sidewalks and roofing and things like that, you know, those kind of lend itself more to the summer months. So they try to plan the work throughout the year so that the work gets done in an orderly fashion.
Charlottetown West Royalty?
And I guess I just look at what are the priorities, when are these going to start, and it just doesn't tell me in the list here of, it's hard to get any information.
To be fair, they have the whole year to kind of plan and execute these. You know, there'd be tenders involved for each one of these projects to make sure that, you know, all the local construction industry has an opportunity to bid on government's work. So they try not to flood the market all at once with it, but you know, trying to as well get it done to make sure that it gets done within the fiscal year that.
No,
Charlottetown West Royalty?
I know. Thank you, Chair. I know there's some very important things in here. I mean, Hemlock Court A, it says cupboards, and I don't know what that, like, is it all the cupboards or a few cupboards, or, you know, it's just.
The hour has been called.
Thanks, Gord. See you tomorrow.
Had them on the ropes with the cupboards.
Mr. Chair, I move the Speaker take the chair and that the chair report progress and beg leave to sit again.
Shall it carry?
What?
I forgot where it was. Yep. Oh, I don't have it. Mr. Oh. Mr. Speaker, as Chair of the Committee of the Whole House having under consideration the grant of capital supply to Her Majesty, I beg leave to report that the committee has made some progress and begs leave to sit again. I move that the report of the committee be adopted.
Shall it carry? Honorable members, the hour has been called, so we'll recess until 7 o'clock this evening. Thank you.